At 7:14 on Thursday morning, humanity discovered something impossible. Above every person appeared a number. Some were measured in decades, some in years, some in days, a few in minutes. At first, nobody knew what the numbers meant. Then, across the city, a woman named Claire Morgan looked at her perfectly healthy husband and saw 23 minutes floating above his head. She laughed because there was nothing else to do. Daniel was 42, irritatingly fit, halfway through making coffee and complaining that someone had used the last clean travel mug. He was not dying. He had a dentist appointment at 10, a presentation at 11, and plans to take their son to football training after work. 23 minutes made no sense. Claire blinked hard. The number remained. 22 minutes, 51 seconds. Daniel noticed her staring. "What?" Claire pointed above him. He looked up instinctively, then frowned. "What am I supposed to be looking at?" she told him. His face changed. Not fear exactly, more like the expression of someone realizing a joke had gone on one beat too long. Then Daniel looked at Claire, and whatever he saw above her made him stop speaking altogether. Across the city, 16-year-old Layla Haddad was brushing her teeth when her mother yelled from the hallway. "Layla, you're going to miss the bus." Layla rolled her eyes at the mirror, spat toothpaste into the sink, and muttered something about how missing the bus might finally be worth it. Then her mother stepped into the doorway. Above her head were 6 hours and 12 minutes. Layla froze. Her mother kept talking. Something about a permission form, something about a jacket, something about the washing she'd left on the floor. Layla heard none of it. 6 hours and 11 minutes. The number was falling. "Mum," she said. Her mother stopped. "What?" Layla stared. "Do you see anything above me?" Her mother's expression went pale. She did. At a suburban train station, 78-year-old Frank Delaney stood beneath a timetable screen that had been wrong for 3 consecutive mornings. He had long ago stopped being surprised by public transport, governments, weather forecasts, or his own knees. But the glowing number above the young man beside him was new. 11 years. Frank looked to the woman on his other side. 4 months. Then to a schoolboy leaning against a pillar. 56 years. Everywhere he looked, time hovered above strangers like invisible clocks that had suddenly decided to become visible. Frank did what old men have always done when reality becomes inconvenient. He adjusted his glasses and looked again. The numbers remained. Then a woman stepped onto the platform, carrying a canvas shopping bag and a bunch of flowers. Frank had never seen her before in his life. Above her head were 31 years, 8 months, and 4 days. He almost laughed. Frank was 78. His cardiologist had used the phrase, "be sensible," so often that it had become less medical advice and more of a threat. 31 years would make him 109. The woman caught him staring. "Can I help you?" Frank looked away. "Probably not." The train arrived before she could ask what that meant. At St. Catherine's Primary School, teacher Priya Nair had 27 children sitting on the carpet in front of her, and 27 different numbers hanging above their heads. 39 years, 7 years, 22 minutes, 48 years, 3 days. The children had noticed them too. They pointed, shouted, laughed, and demanded explanations. One little boy asked whether the numbers were scores. Another wanted to know why his best friend had more than he did. Priya told them to sit down, even though she had no idea what she was supposed to say next. Then she looked toward the classroom door. Her teaching assistant, Molly, stood there gripping the handle. Above Molly's head were 9 minutes. Priya's stomach dropped. "Molly?" Molly looked back at her. Yours says 52 years. Neither woman spoke for several seconds. By 7:18, videos were already flooding the internet. People filmed family members, strangers, pets, mirrors, television presenters, politicians, footballers, newborn babies. The numbers appeared in recordings exactly as they did in real life. They could not be photographed away, filtered out, covered, or switched off. Closing your eyes was the only way not to see them. The first theory was obvious: death clocks. Somebody posted a video of an elderly man with 43 seconds above his head. Millions watched. 40, 30, 20, 10. His family cried around him as the timer reached 0. Then nothing happened. The man remained alive, annoyed, and deeply confused. For 6 seconds, the internet celebrated. Then his daughter received a phone call. A care facility had a room available immediately. She had been trying to convince him to move for months. He accepted. 43 seconds later, he walked out of his daughter's home for the last time. The second theory spread faster. The numbers did not show how long people had left to live. They showed how long they had left with each other. That distinction changed everything. Claire was still standing in the kitchen when Daniel's number dropped below 19 minutes. She looked at their wedding photograph on the refrigerator. 15 years together, 2 children, a mortgage, arguments about dishwasher stacking, Sunday grocery runs, 1,000 ordinary nights on the couch. 19 minutes was absurd. "What do you see above me?" she asked again. Daniel swallowed. 43 years. Claire stared at him. "That doesn't make sense." "I know. If yours says 19 minutes and mine says 43 years, then one of them is wrong." Daniel did not answer. Somehow, that frightened her more. Layla's mother cancelled work. Layla refused to go to school. They sat at opposite ends of the kitchen table, as 6 hours became 5 hours and 58 minutes. For the first time in months, neither of them knew how to continue the argument they had been having since Layla turned 16. Curfews, friends, clothes, university. Her mother wanting to know everything. Layla wanting her to stop asking. Suddenly, every unfinished fight had a clock attached to it. Frank boarded the train and deliberately chose a carriage far from the woman with the flowers. 31 years was ridiculous. He did not need another mystery in his life. He sat beside the window, folded his newspaper, and tried not to think about her. At the next station, the doors opened. The woman stepped into his carriage and sat directly opposite him. Frank looked up. 31 years, 8 months, 4 days. She looked above his head and frowned. "That's strange," she said. Frank's heart gave a small, unwelcome kick. "What is?" She hesitated. "Yours says 12 minutes. At St. Catherine's, Molly's timer reached 4 minutes. Priya sent the children to the adjoining classroom and refused to let Molly leave. "You're staying here," Priya said. "Why?" "Because your number says 4 minutes. Molly laughed nervously. "Maybe that's how long until lunch. It's 7:26 in the morning." "Early lunch." Priya did not smile. Then Molly's phone rang. She stared at the screen. Her younger sister's name appeared. Molly answered. At first she said nothing. Then her face crumpled. Her sister had gone into labor 3 weeks early. She was alone. Their mother was interstate. Molly grabbed her bag. Priya followed her into the hallway. "Wait!" Molly shook her head. "I have to go." The timer above her dropped below 60 seconds. Priya stood in the doorway as Molly hurried toward the car park. 50 seconds, 40, 30. Priya almost called after her, but she didn't know what she was asking Molly to stay for. 20, 10. Molly reached her car. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Molly opened the driver's door and disappeared from Priya's life exactly as the number vanished. Not dead, not injured, gone. For the first time that morning, Priya understood what the clocks were measuring. Not life, not death. Something messier, something far more human. Connection. Back in Claire's kitchen, Daniel's timer reached 12 minutes. Claire stepped between him and the front door. "You're not going anywhere." Daniel stared at her. "Claire, cool work. Cancel everything. Sit down." "I can't." "You absolutely can." His phone buzzed on the counter. A message appeared from a number Claire didn't recognize. Daniel turned the screen face down too quickly. Claire saw it anyway. Above Daniel's head, 11 minutes and 42 seconds remained. And suddenly, Claire was no longer afraid that her husband was going to die. She was afraid he was about to leave. At 7:14 on Thursday morning, humanity discovered something impossible. Above every person appeared a number. Some were measured in decades, some in years, some in days, a few in minutes. At first, nobody knew what the numbers meant. Then, across the city, a woman named Claire Morgan looked at her perfectly healthy husband and saw 23 minutes floating above his head. She laughed because there was nothing else to do. Daniel was 42, irritatingly fit, halfway through making coffee and complaining that someone had used the last clean travel mug. He was not dying. He had a dentist appointment at 10, a presentation at 11, and plans to take their son to football training after work. 23 minutes made no sense. Claire blinked hard. The number remained. 22 minutes, 51 seconds. Daniel noticed her staring. "What?" Claire pointed above him. He looked up instinctively, then frowned. "What am I supposed to be looking at?" she told him. His face changed. Not fear exactly, more like the expression of someone realizing a joke had gone on one beat too long. Then Daniel looked at Claire, and whatever he saw above her made him stop speaking altogether. Across the city, 16-year-old Layla Haddad was brushing her teeth when her mother yelled from the hallway. "Layla, you're going to miss the bus." Layla rolled her eyes at the mirror, spat toothpaste into the sink, and muttered something about how missing the bus might finally be worth it. Then her mother stepped into the doorway. Above her head were 6 hours and 12 minutes. Layla froze. Her mother kept talking. Something about a permission form, something about a jacket, something about the washing she'd left on the floor. Layla heard none of it. 6 hours and 11 minutes. The number was falling. "Mum," she said. Her mother stopped. "What?" Layla stared. "Do you see anything above me?" Her mother's expression went pale. She did. At a suburban train station, 78-year-old Frank Delaney stood beneath a timetable screen that had been wrong for 3 consecutive mornings. He had long ago stopped being surprised by public transport, governments, weather forecasts, or his own knees. But the glowing number above the young man beside him was new. 11 years. Frank looked to the woman on his other side. 4 months. Then to a schoolboy leaning against a pillar. 56 years. Everywhere he looked, time hovered above strangers like invisible clocks that had suddenly decided to become visible. Frank did what old men have always done when reality becomes inconvenient. He adjusted his glasses and looked again. The numbers remained. Then a woman stepped onto the platform, carrying a canvas shopping bag and a bunch of flowers. Frank had never seen her before in his life. Above her head were 31 years, 8 months, and 4 days. He almost laughed. Frank was 78. His cardiologist had used the phrase, "be sensible," so often that it had become less medical advice and more of a threat. 31 years would make him 109. The woman caught him staring. "Can I help you?" Frank looked away. Probably not. The train arrived before she could ask what that meant. At St. Catherine's Primary School, teacher Priya Nair had 27 children sitting on the carpet in front of her, and 27 different numbers hanging above their heads. 39 years, 7 years, 22 minutes, 48 years, 3 days. The children had noticed them too. They pointed, shouted, laughed, and demanded explanations. One little boy asked whether the numbers were scores. Another wanted to know why his best friend had more than he did. Priya told them to sit down, even though she had no idea what she was supposed to say next. Then she looked toward the classroom door. Her teaching assistant, Molly, stood there gripping the handle. Above Molly's head were 9 minutes. Priya's stomach dropped. "Molly?" Molly looked back at her. "Yours says 52 years." Neither woman spoke for several seconds. By 7:18, videos were already flooding the internet. People filmed family members, strangers, pets, mirrors, television presenters, politicians, footballers, newborn babies. The numbers appeared in recordings exactly as they did in real life. They could not be photographed away, filtered out, covered, or switched off. Closing your eyes was the only way not to see them. The first theory was obvious: death clocks. Somebody posted a video of an elderly man with 43 seconds above his head. Millions watched. 40, 30, 20, 10. His family cried around him as the timer reached 0. Then nothing happened. The man remained alive, annoyed, and deeply confused. For 6 seconds, the internet celebrated. Then his daughter received a phone call. A care facility had a room available immediately. She had been trying to convince him to move for months. He accepted. 43 seconds later, he walked out of his daughter's home for the last time. The second theory spread faster. The numbers did not show how long people had left to live. They showed how long they had left with each other. That distinction changed everything. Claire was still standing in the kitchen when Daniel's number dropped below 19 minutes. She looked at their wedding photograph on the refrigerator. 15 years together, 2 children, a mortgage, arguments about dishwasher stacking, Sunday grocery runs, 1,000 ordinary nights on the couch. 19 minutes was absurd. "What do you see above me?" she asked again. Daniel swallowed. 43 years. Claire stared at him. "That doesn't make sense." "I know. If yours says 19 minutes and mine says 43 years, then one of them is wrong." Daniel did not answer. Somehow, that frightened her more. Layla's mother cancelled work. Layla refused to go to school. They sat at opposite ends of the kitchen table, as 6 hours became 5 hours and 58 minutes. For the first time in months, neither of them knew how to continue the argument they had been having since Layla turned 16. Curfews, friends, clothes, university. Her mother wanting to know everything. Layla wanting her to stop asking. Suddenly, every unfinished fight had a clock attached to it. Frank boarded the train and deliberately chose a carriage far from the woman with the flowers. 31 years was ridiculous. He did not need another mystery in his life. He sat beside the window, folded his newspaper, and tried not to think about her. At the next station, the doors opened. The woman stepped into his carriage and sat directly opposite him. Frank looked up. 31 years, 8 months, 4 days. She looked above his head and frowned. "That's strange," she said. Frank's heart gave a small, unwelcome kick. "What is?" She hesitated. "Yours says 12 minutes. At St. Catherine's, Molly's timer reached 4 minutes. Priya sent the children to the adjoining classroom and refused to let Molly leave. "You're staying here," Priya said. "Why?" "Because your number says 4 minutes. Molly laughed nervously. "Maybe that's how long until lunch." "It's 7:26 in the morning." Early lunch. Priya did not smile. Then Molly's phone rang. She stared at the screen. Her younger sister's name appeared. Molly answered. At first she said nothing. Then her face crumpled. Her sister had gone into labor 3 weeks early. She was alone. Their mother was interstate. Molly grabbed her bag. Priya followed her into the hallway. Wait! Molly shook her head. I have to go. The timer above her dropped below 60 seconds. Priya stood in the doorway as Molly hurried toward the car park. 50 seconds, 40, 30. Priya almost called after her, but she didn't know what she was asking Molly to stay for. 20, 10. Molly reached her car. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Molly opened the driver's door and disappeared from Priya's life, exactly as the number vanished. Not dead, not injured. Gone. For the first time that morning, Priya understood what the clocks were measuring. Not life, not death. Something messier, something far more human. Connection. Back in Claire's kitchen, Daniel's timer reached 12 minutes. Claire stepped between him and the front door. You're not going anywhere. Daniel stared at her. Claire, cool work. Cancel everything. Sit down. I can't. You absolutely can. His phone buzzed on the counter. A message appeared from a number Claire didn't recognize. Daniel turned the screen face down too quickly. Claire saw it anyway. Above Daniel's head, 11 minutes and 42 seconds remained. And suddenly, Claire was no longer afraid that her husband was going to die. She was afraid he was about to leave. By 8:31 a.m., the world had produced more theories about the clocks than it had produced reliable facts. News channels invited physicists, psychologists, theologians, mathematicians, relationship counselors, futurists, and one man who claimed to have predicted the phenomenon in a podcast recorded 3 years earlier. Social media moved faster. People posted photographs of husbands beneath zeros, strangers beneath decades, dead relatives whose numbers still appeared in old photographs, and pets above whom some people swore they could see clocks, while others saw nothing. The hashtag #forever had become the most used phrase on Earth. Some treated it as proof of soulmates. Others treated it as a threat. Videos appeared of strangers searching train stations for people who displayed the word above them. Dating apps crashed after users began adding timer screenshots to their profiles. Couples broke up because one person's number was lower than expected. Other couples proposed because theirs was high. One church announced that forever indicated divine connection. Another warned that the clocks were a test. Governments repeated the same instruction: do not make irreversible decisions based on an unexplained phenomenon. Humanity responded by making thousands of irreversible decisions before breakfast. At 8:34, a live stream from Melbourne showed a young man standing on a bridge because the number above his girlfriend had reached 0. Millions watched strangers talk him down. At 8:36, a woman in Tokyo posted a video laughing because her ex-husband displayed 27 years, while the man she had married last month displayed 9 days. At 8:38, the first murder attributed to a timer was reported. By 8:40, every major platform began hiding numerical relationship predictions from search results. It did nothing. The clocks were not on screens. They were everywhere people looked. Layla had stopped arguing with her mother. That frightened her almost as much as the timer. 14 hours and 17 minutes had remained unchanged since they hugged. Nadia made tea because she did not know what else to do. Layla sat on the kitchen bench, watching her mother move through the room she had known her entire life. The chipped blue mug, the cupboard that never closed properly, the tiny burn mark beside the stove from the night Nadia had tried to make caramel and nearly set a tea towel on fire. Ordinary things became archaeological when you believed they might disappear. Do you remember when I was scared of the hallway? Layla asked. Nadia turned. You were scared of everything. I was 5. You made me stand outside the bathroom. Because the hallway monster waited near the laundry. Nadia smiled. Very specific monster. Layla smiled too. Then the smile disappeared. When did we stop talking? Nadia placed the kettle down. We talk. No, we coordinate. The word landed harder than Layla intended. Nadia leaned against the counter. Layla continued. You ask if I've done homework. I ask if you can drive me somewhere. You tell me my room is disgusting. I tell you you're controlling. That's not talking. Nadia looked at the timer above her daughter's head. 28 years. Maybe I thought there'd be time later. Layla looked up at the number she could see above her mother. 14 hours. That's kind of the problem, isn't it? Nadia sat beside her. Neither apologized. Not yet. Some relationships had accumulated too many small injuries for one hug to repair them. But for the first time in months, they remained in the same room without trying to win. Then Layla's phone vibrated. A message from her best friend, Sophie. Layla, please answer. Layla opened it. A photograph loaded. Sophie was standing beside her father. Above his head was 0. Beneath the photograph, Sophie had written, "He won't wake up." Layla's timer above Nadia immediately dropped. 14 hours, 13, 12. Nadia saw her daughter's face. What happened? Layla slid from the bench. I have to go. The timer fell faster. 11 hours, 10. Nadia stood. Layla, Sophie's dad. I'll drive you. The timer stopped. Layla looked at her mother. Nadia grabbed the car keys. You're not doing this alone. The timer increased by 11 minutes. Frank Delaney had spent most of his life distrusting coincidences. Coincidences were what people called patterns when they were too lazy to investigate them. That was what he used to tell junior detectives, back when he had a badge, a desk covered in paperwork, and knees that did not predict rain. Evelyn did not know any of this. She only knew the old man opposite her had become very interested in the name Thomas. You're Thomas, she said. What happened to him? Frank watched his timer fall below 2 minutes. Long story. We apparently have 31 years. You do. Evelyn frowned. What? Frank pointed above her. I've got 1 minute 52. She stared. Above Frank, she still saw 31 years, 4 months, 6 days. That's impossible. You're saying that today? She almost smiled. Frank did not. Thomas Delaney was my son. Evelyn's face softened. Was? Died 22 years ago. I'm sorry. Frank nodded once. He had learned long ago how to receive condolences without opening the door behind them. Evelyn looked at the lilies. My nephew's middle name is Delaney. Frank's eyes lifted. The train seemed to become very far away. What did you say? Thomas. Thomas Delaney Park. 1 minute and 28 seconds. Frank leaned forward. How old is he? 24. Frank calculated before she finished speaking. His son had died 22 years ago. Impossible. Unless... Who's his father? Evelyn's expression changed. I don't know. You don't know? Grace never told us. Frank stood too quickly and grabbed the pole beside him. When was Thomas born? Evelyn gave him the date. Frank remembered that month. He remembered his son coming home at 3 in the morning, drunk and shaking. He remembered a shouting match in the kitchen. He remembered saying words a father should never say to a child, because fathers, like everyone else, assume there will be time to replace cruel sentences with better ones. 2 weeks later, Thomas Delaney drove north. 3 months after that, he died in a crash outside Newcastle. Frank had spent 22 years believing their final conversation was the last chapter of his son's life. 49 seconds. Grace knew my son. Evelyn's hand moved to her mouth. Frank's eyes filled before he could stop them. Your nephew might be my grandson. The timer above Evelyn reached 30 seconds. Evelyn stared at Frank as 31 years remained above him. We're going to St. Vincent's, she whispered. Thomas is there. 20 seconds. Frank stood before the train had reached Central. Then we're going together. The timer stopped at 17 seconds. At St. Catherine's, the children had been moved into the hall because nobody could teach anymore. Parents arrived in waves, some collecting their children, some refusing to leave them, some staring at numbers as though report cards had been printed above the people they loved. Priya sat beside Mia and her father near the stage. Mia still saw forever above him. He still saw 0 above her. Maybe 0 doesn't mean loss, Priya said. She's leaving tonight. That's loss, but not necessarily the loss you're imagining. Mia swung her legs beneath the chair. Dad thinks Mum is taking me forever. Her father closed his eyes. Children had an extraordinary ability to remove the polite wrapping adults placed around pain. Mia, I don't want either of you to win. His timer above Mia flickered. 0. Then 1 minute. Then 0 again. Priya noticed. Say that again. Mia frowned. What? What you just said. I don't want either of them to win. The number changed. 2 minutes. Her father stared above his daughter. What are you doing? Priya asked. Nothing. What are you thinking? He looked embarrassed. That maybe I could call her mother. 3 minutes. And? Tell her I don't want to fight about the flight. 7 minutes. Mia smiled. 12. Her father began crying again. The clock climbed through hours. Priya watched in astonishment. It was not measuring geography. It was not measuring physical proximity. It was measuring something that could survive oceans and something that resentment could destroy while 2 people sat in the same room. Then Priya thought of Molly. She called again. This time her sister answered immediately. Hey, Priya swallowed. I was angry when you left. I know. No, I mean before today. For months. Because Mum always calls you first. Because you got married first. Because everyone treats your life like it started properly, and mine is still waiting to. And I think I've been punishing you for a competition you didn't know we were having. On the other end, Molly breathed in sharply. Priya, I'm sorry. A number appeared. 1 year, then 3, then 11. Priya laughed through tears. What? Molly asked. I can see it again. See what? Priya looked at the number. 43 years. Nothing, just don't disappear on me again. Molly laughed. You literally told me to go. I know. I'm working on myself. 44 years. Claire stood in her own hallway staring at a stranger who apparently belonged to her forever. This is ridiculous, Daniel said. His timer had reached 43 seconds. Nobody answered him. Rebecca remained near the front door. Maybe forever doesn't mean what everyone thinks. Claire looked at her. I sincerely hope not. Despite herself, Rebecca laughed. Claire did too. It lasted half a second. Daniel did not find it funny. Can we focus? Claire turned. On what, Daniel? Your 46 years with Rebecca? My forever with Rebecca? Or the 40 seconds apparently left in our marriage? You don't know that's what it means. Neither do you. Exactly. So stop treating it like a verdict. Daniel stepped closer. 37 seconds. Then tell me without the clock, Claire said. Do you love her? Rebecca looked down. Daniel answered slowly. I don't know. Claire nodded. The timer dropped to 29 seconds. Do you love me? Yes. The timer stopped. Claire waited. Daniel continued. But I haven't been happy. The timer moved again. 28, 27. Claire's eyes filled. Neither have I. The timer stopped. Rebecca quietly stepped backward toward the door. Claire looked at her. Don't go. Daniel blinked. Rebecca did too. Why? Claire looked at Forever. Because apparently you're involved now. Rebecca gave the smallest, strangest laugh. Daniel sank into a chair. For the next 10 minutes, 3 adults did something none of them had expected to do that morning. They told the truth. Rebecca admitted she loved Daniel. Daniel admitted he had encouraged it because being wanted by someone new was easier than feeling invisible to someone who knew every version of him. Claire admitted she had known something was wrong and had chosen silence because confronting it might destroy the life she had built. Daniel's timer rose and fell as they spoke. 27 seconds, 6 minutes, 2, 11, 40 seconds. It behaved less like prophecy and more like a pulse. Then Claire asked Rebecca the question none of them had considered. What do you see above Daniel now? Rebecca looked. Her face went pale. Nothing. Daniel stood. What? It's gone. Claire looked above him. 12 minutes remained. Rebecca looked above Claire. Forever. Claire looked above Rebecca. Forever. Daniel stared between them. Why can you still see hers? Rebecca whispered. I don't know. Then Claire's phone rang. An unknown number. She almost ignored it. Something made her answer. Hello? A man's voice said her name. Claire Morgan? Yes. My name is Dr. Elias Ward. I'm calling from the National Phenomena Response Unit. Claire looked at Daniel. The what? Mrs. Morgan, we believe you may be one of a very small number of people displaying an anomalous reading. Claire looked at Rebecca. Forever. What kind of reading? The man paused. A permanent one. By midday, the world had learned enough to become more frightened, not less. Researchers confirmed that the clocks reacted to decisions, emotional states, reconciliation, avoidance, honesty, resentment, and in some cases, simple attention. They were not fixed predictions. They were possibilities in motion. A husband could wake with 30 years above his wife and reduce it to 3 days by deciding to leave. A daughter could gain years with her father by making a phone call she had postponed for months. Strangers could carry decades. Families could carry 0. The numbers did not reward love in any simple way. Abusive relationships sometimes displayed enormous numbers. Lifelong marriages sometimes displayed minutes. Forever remained the rarest reading. Fewer than 1 person in several million reported seeing it. Stranger still, almost every verified Forever connection shared one feature. The people involved had not yet understood why they were connected. News anchors began calling them permanent pairs. The phrase spread. Claire hated it immediately. Frank never heard it. He and Evelyn were running through St. Vincent's Hospital, the old detective moving faster than he had in years. 17 seconds remained above Evelyn. 31 years remained above Frank. They found Thomas Park outside maternity, holding a newborn baby. Evelyn stopped. Thomas. The young man turned. Frank saw his son's face. Not exactly. Time had rearranged it. Grace was there too, around the eyes. But the tilt of the head, the shape of the mouth, the tiny crease that appeared between his eyebrows when confused. Frank had seen those things at breakfast tables 25 years earlier. Thomas looked at Evelyn. Who's this? Evelyn couldn't answer. Frank looked above Thomas's head. There was no number. There was a word. Forever. Frank stopped breathing. Thomas stared above Frank, his face drained of color. What the hell? Frank already knew. You see it too? Thomas nodded. Evelyn's timer reached 10 seconds. Frank looked at her, then at the grandson he had not known existed. 8 seconds. 7. 6. Evelyn. She looked at him. 5. Frank took her hand. Thank you. 4. For what? 3. Bringing him back. 2. Evelyn squeezed his hand. 1. 0. The number disappeared. Evelyn remained standing in front of him, alive, smiling through tears. Frank looked back at Thomas. Forever remained. And for the first time that day, 0 did not look like an ending. It looked like a door. At 12:17 p.m., Dr. Elias Ward sent Claire a photograph. It had been taken in Copenhagen less than an hour earlier. 2 women stood on opposite sides of a hospital room. Above each other they saw forever. They had never met before that morning. A second photograph came from Nairobi. 2 men. Forever. Then Sao Paulo. A child and an elderly woman. Seoul. A taxi driver and a surgeon. Auckland. 2 strangers who had boarded the same bus. Claire scrolled through them, while Rebecca sat beside her on the couch. Daniel stood near the window. What are they? Claire asked. Dr. Ward answered through the speakerphone. We don't know, but we have identified something else. Every confirmed permanent connection appears shortly before a significant event involving both people. Claire waited. What kind of event? We don't know yet, but in 17 documented cases, the people involved changed the course of one another's lives within 24 hours of meeting. Claire stared at Rebecca. Changed how? Marriage, death, birth, rescue, crime, reconciliation. In one case, one individual donated an organ to the other 17 years later. Rebecca whispered, 17 years. Mrs. Morgan, forever may not describe how long someone remains physically present in your life. Claire thought of everything they had learned that morning. Then what does it describe? Dr. Ward was silent long enough that Claire thought the call had dropped. Finally, he said, impact. The word settled over the room. Claire looked at Rebecca again. Not soulmate, not destiny, not a promise that they would remain together. Impact. Some people stayed in your life for an afternoon and altered every year that followed. Some stayed 40 years and left almost no trace of who you became. Maybe forever did not mean a person would never leave. Maybe it meant that after meeting them, some part of you never returned to what it had been before. Daniel's timer above Claire suddenly changed. 12 minutes became 9 years. Claire gasped. Daniel saw her expression. What? She pointed. 9 years! His eyes filled with relief. Then the number changed again. 8, 7, 6. Years disappeared in seconds. Claire? 5 years. 4. Rebecca stood. 3. Daniel reached for Claire. 2 years. 1. Then months. Claire stared helplessly as the future collapsed above the man she had loved for 15 years. 30 days. 12. 3. 24 hours. Daniel whispered, "What are you thinking?" Claire could barely answer. That maybe loving someone isn't the same as choosing to stay. The clock reached 1 hour, then stopped. Outside, somewhere beyond their quiet suburban street, sirens moved toward the city. Claire's phone vibrated with another emergency alert. This one contained only 9 words. Researchers have identified what causes the clocks to reach zero. The emergency alert reached almost every connected device on Earth at 12:19 p.m. For 11 seconds, it displayed only the sentence that had stopped conversations in homes, hospitals, schools, and streets. Researchers have identified what causes the clocks to reach zero. Then the second line appeared. Zero occurs when a future connection becomes impossible. Claire read it twice. Daniel read it over her shoulder. Rebecca whispered, "Impossible how?" A third line arrived. This does not necessarily indicate death. The clarification should have been comforting. It wasn't. Dr. Elias Ward was still on speakerphone when Claire asked him to explain. "We're working from a limited sample," he said, "but every verified zero we've studied has followed the permanent closure of a possible path between two people." Daniel frowned. Permanent closure? Death can do it. So can a final separation. So can a decision that makes future contact effectively impossible. In some cases, zero appears when a person emotionally severs the connection, even though both people remain physically alive. Claire looked above Daniel. 58 minutes. "So these things know our decisions before we make them?" "No," Ward said. "That's the distinction. We don't think they're predicting decisions. We think they're displaying the future that your present choices are creating." Nobody spoke. Ward continued. "Think of it less like a countdown and more like a trajectory. Change direction, and the reading can change." Rebecca stared at forever above Claire. "Then why can't ours change?" Ward was silent. "That's what concerns us." Claire felt the word more than heard it. Concerns. Outside, a helicopter crossed the pale Sydney sky. Daniel's timer lost another minute. Claire suddenly understood why the clocks frightened people so much. They did not imprison anyone inside fate. They did something crueler. They suggested that fate might be negotiable, which meant every disappearing year could feel like your fault. Nadia drove while Layla refreshed Sophie's messages. No reply. The trip should have taken 12 minutes. Traffic made it 23. Sydney had begun behaving like a city evacuating from an invisible disaster. Cars were abandoned near intersections. People stood on footpaths arguing into phones. Outside a florist, a man knelt in front of a woman holding a ring while she shook her head and pointed furiously at the number above him. A bus had stopped because the driver was crying. Every few streets, Layla saw strangers embracing as though the clocks had given permission for affection they had been rationing. Nadia kept both hands on the wheel. Above her, Layla saw 13 hours and 56 minutes. "It's going down again." Nadia glanced at her. "Mine?" "Yeah. Are you planning to get rid of me?" Layla almost smiled. "Depends how you drive." Nadia laughed, and the number gained 4 minutes. Layla stared. "That's so weird. Maybe it likes my jokes." "Let's not get carried away." 5 more minutes appeared. Nadia glanced at her daughter and laughed harder. For half a kilometer, they were simply mother and daughter again. Then Layla's phone rang. Sophie. "Soph." The sound on the other end was not crying anymore. It was emptier. "He's dead." Layla stopped breathing. Nadia reached across and squeezed her knee without taking her eyes off the road. "The ambulance came," Sophie said. "They tried. Mum keeps saying it was his heart." Layla searched for a sentence large enough to hold what had happened. There wasn't one. "I'm coming." "Don't." "What?" "Don't come because of the clock." Layla looked above Nadia. 13 hours, 58. Sophie continued. "Everyone keeps looking at me like I'm a timer. My aunt asked what number I saw before Dad died. The paramedic asked. Mum asked if it reached 0 before he stopped breathing. I don't want to talk about numbers." Layla's eyes filled. "I'm not coming because of the clock." A pause. "Then why?" "Because you're my best friend." Nadia's timer gained 3 hours. Layla watched it happen. Sophie whispered, "Okay." Nadia turned into Sophie's street. "We're here," Layla said. She opened the door before the car fully settled. Nadia called after her. "I'll wait." Layla stopped. "You can come in." Nadia looked surprised. "You sure?" Layla nodded. "Yeah." The timer jumped from 17 hours to 2 days. For the first time that morning, Layla smiled at a number without being afraid of it. At St. Vincent's Hospital, Frank sat opposite the grandson he had discovered 30 minutes earlier and could not decide which question deserved to be first. Thomas Park held his newborn daughter against his chest. The baby had no clock above her. Frank had checked repeatedly. Thomas had noticed. "You keep looking at her." "Sorry. Do you see one?" Frank shook his head. "Nothing." Thomas looked relieved. "Me neither." Evelyn had gone to find coffee and give them privacy, though privacy was a generous word for two strangers sitting in a maternity corridor, surrounded by families staring at numbers above one another's heads. Forever remained above Thomas. Thomas saw the same above Frank. "Aunt Ev says you think you knew my father." Frank swallowed. "I did." "How?" "He was my son." Thomas looked down at the baby. He had received the information 10 minutes earlier and still seemed to be waiting for someone to tell him it was a misunderstanding. "Mum never told me his name." Maybe she had a reason. She had 24 years. Frank absorbed that. It would have been easy to defend a dead woman he had never met. Easier still to resent her. Instead, he said, "People can spend a lifetime avoiding one conversation." Thomas looked at him. Frank continued, "I know because I did." The newborn shifted. Thomas adjusted the blanket with surprising tenderness. What was he like? Frank's throat tightened. There it was. The question he had imagined someone asking for 22 years, except in every version he had rehearsed, he had known how to answer. He could say his son loved rugby league, hated tomatoes, sang terribly, drove too fast, and once brought home an injured magpie because he couldn't leave it on the road. He could say Thomas Delaney had been stubborn, funny, reckless and kind. But none of those facts answered what his grandson was really asking. He was better than the last thing I ever said to him. Thomas waited. Frank looked at the floor. We fought. He wanted money. I thought he was wasting his life. I told him if he walked out, not to come back until he had something worth coming back for. Thomas's eyes dropped to his daughter. Frank's voice weakened. He never came back. Forever remained. Did you love him? Thomas asked. Every day. Did he know? Frank looked at the word above his grandson. I don't know. Thomas nodded slowly. That's a terrible answer. Frank gave a broken smile. Yes, it is. The baby made a tiny sound. Thomas looked down at her. Her name is Grace. Frank closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was crying. That's a good name. Thomas shifted closer on the bench. Not much, an inch perhaps. But after 22 years of grief, an inch could be a continent. Priya returned to her classroom after lunch and found Noah sitting beneath his desk. School had officially closed, but his mother was a nurse and his father had been unable to leave work, so 6 children remained with staff. Noah had arranged magnetic letters in a circle around himself. What are you doing? Priya asked. Protection. From. He pointed upward. Above Priya, Noah apparently saw something she could not. Your number keeps changing. Priya sat cross-legged on the floor outside the magnetic circle. Is that bad? I don't know. Then why do I need protecting? You don't. I do. Priya's smile disappeared. What do you see above me? Noah hesitated. 4 hours. Priya looked toward the clock on the wall. And what did it say before? 20 years. Her stomach dropped. When did it change? When you came back in. Priya forced herself not to react. What do you see above Mr. Collins? 9 years. And the other teachers? Noah listed numbers. Nothing unusual. Priya took out her phone and called Molly. Her sister answered on the second ring. "Everything okay? Can you see my number?" Priya asked. "Yeah." "What does it say?" Silence. "Molly." 4 hours. Priya stood. The magnetic letters scattered under her shoe. "It was 44 years. "I know. When did it change?" "A few minutes ago." Priya looked around the classroom. Nothing had happened. No argument, no decision, no dramatic revelation. Just a room filled with drawings and lunchboxes. "Are you angry with me?" "No." "Am I angry with you?" "How would I know?" Priya almost laughed. Then every number she could see above the remaining children changed at once. 18 years became 4 hours. 12 years became 4 hours. 31 became 4. 7 became 4. Priya walked into the hallway. Mr. Collins was speaking with a parent. His number above Priya read 4 hours. The parents did too. Everyone she looked at displayed the same reading. 4 hours, 3 hours, 59 minutes, 58 seconds. Priya's blood went cold. This wasn't about relationships. Not this time. Her phone vibrated. Dr. Ward's emergency unit had issued another advisory. Identical countdowns across multiple unrelated connections may indicate a shared external event. Seek safe shelter and follow local emergency instructions. Priya looked at the 6 children still waiting for parents. "Mr. Collins," she said. He turned. "We need to get them downstairs." Claire had been asked to come to a temporary research facility established inside a university building near the city. Daniel wanted to drive her. Rebecca offered too. Claire wanted neither of them and both of them, which felt like a reasonable summary of her morning. In the end, all 3 got into Daniel's car. No one discussed the seating arrangement. Rebecca sat in the back. Daniel's timer above Claire had stabilized at 51 minutes. Rebecca still saw nothing above Daniel. Claire and Rebecca still saw forever above each other. The radio played emergency updates between long stretches of static. Reports had emerged of clusters of identical timers in Sydney, Singapore, Vancouver, and Johannesburg. Authorities insisted there was no confirmed threat. The phrase "confirmed threat" had become meaningless by lunchtime. As they approached the city, Claire noticed people moving away from the CBD. "Why is everyone going the other way?" Daniel asked. The radio answered him. "Emergency services are responding to an incident involving a gas main beneath the central business district. Residents are advised to avoid the affected area." Rebecca leaned forward. "The research facility is in the CBD." Daniel immediately indicated left. "We're not going." Claire's phone rang. "Ward." "Where are you?" he asked. 20 minutes away." "Turn around." Daniel glanced at her. Claire said, "Already doing it." Ward sounded breathless. "Good. We've got correlated readings dropping across the city. We think the clocks are detecting the consequences of the gas leak." "Detecting," Claire said, "or reacting to choices around it. We don't know." "Very reassuring. Claire, listen carefully. The forever readings are behaving differently. Every permanent pair we've been monitoring is moving toward an event, despite attempts to separate them." Claire looked at Rebecca in the mirror. "Meaning?" "Meaning when one person changes direction, circumstances seem to redirect the other." Daniel muttered, "That sounds a lot like fate." Ward heard him. "No, it sounds like statistics we don't understand." Then the line crackled. "Claire, there's something else. Rebecca needs to..." The call dropped. Daniel's car slowed. Ahead, traffic had stopped. A police officer waved vehicles away from the city. Then Rebecca's phone rang. She looked at the screen. "It's my daughter." Claire turned. "You have a daughter," Rebecca answered. A child's panicked voice came through loudly enough for them all to hear. Mum, we're still at school. They won't let us leave." Rebecca went white. "Where are you?" The child named the school. Claire knew it. St. Catherine's. Rebecca grabbed Daniel's shoulder. Turn around. He already was. Claire looked above Rebecca. Forever. Rebecca looked above Claire. Forever. Daniel's timer above Claire jumped from 51 minutes to 3 hours. None of them noticed. Nadia and Layla were still at Sophie's house when the evacuation alert reached them. Sophie's mother sat on the lounge room floor surrounded by relatives. Her husband's body had been taken away 20 minutes earlier, but the indentation where he had slept that morning remained on the couch cushion. Grief had entered the house faster than anyone could rearrange it. Nadia read the alert. "We need to move." Sophie's mother looked up. "Why?" "Gas leak. They're evacuating several suburbs." Layla checked the map. "We're outside the zone." Nadia looked above her daughter. 2 days had become 3 hours, 51 minutes. She did not tell her. Instead, she said, "We're leaving anyway." Sophie's mother shook her head. "I'm not going anywhere." Nadia crouched beside her. "I understand." "No, you don't." "You're right, I don't. But Sophie needs you to move." Sophie's mother looked at her daughter. Above Sophie, she saw forever. She began sobbing. "It says forever." Nadia's expression softened. "Then don't make her spend forever remembering that she couldn't get you off this floor." The room went silent. Sophie's mother stared at Nadia. Slowly, she stood. Layla watched her mother gather car keys, medication, water, chargers, and a photograph from the mantelpiece. She had spent years thinking Nadia's instinct to organize everything was controlling. In a crisis, the same instinct looked remarkably like love. "Where do we go?" Sophie asked. Nadia checked the emergency map. "West." Layla's phone buzzed with a school group chat. Messages flooded the screen. "St. Catherine's is locked down. My brother's there. Someone said all their timers say 4 hours." Layla looked at her mother. "Mom." Nadia read the message. Her face changed. "That's near the leak." Layla nodded. Nadia's number above her dropped to 3 hours, 46 minutes. Then Layla saw a name in the chat that made her stop. Maya Rebecca Hart, year 3. "Rebecca," she whispered. Nadia glanced at her. Who? Layla didn't know. She had never met Rebecca Hart. But somewhere across the city, Claire Morgan and Rebecca Hart were racing toward a school, unaware that a 16-year-old stranger had just read the name that would eventually connect all of them. St. Catherine's basement had been designed for storage, not fear. 6 children, 4 staff members, and 11 parents crowded between sports equipment, archived files, and boxes of Christmas decorations. Priya counted everyone twice. Mia sat beside Noah. Her father had returned just before the lockdown and now held her hand so tightly she complained. Above every person, Priya could see the same timer. 3 hours, 28 minutes. Mia did not. She still saw forever above her father. "Why is yours different?" Priya asked. Mia shrugged. "Maybe forever is longer than 3 hours." It was such a child's answer that Priya nearly laughed. Then someone knocked on the basement door. Every adult froze. Mr. Collins moved toward it. "Police!" No answer. Another knock. 3 sharp taps. Priya's phone had no signal. "Don't open it," one parent whispered. A voice came through the door. "Mia!" Mia jumped up. "Mom!" Priya unlocked it. Rebecca burst inside, followed by Claire and Daniel. Mia ran into her arms. Rebecca collapsed to her knees. "Oh my God!" Claire stopped in the doorway. The instant she saw Priya, the word above Rebecca flickered, forever vanished. In its place appeared 3 hours, 27 minutes. Rebecca looked at Claire. "Yours changed." Claire stared above Rebecca. 3 hours, 27. Their permanent reading was gone. Dr. Ward had said it couldn't change. Then Claire looked at Priya. Above her head was forever. Priya looked back at Claire, confused. "Do I know you?" Claire could barely speak. "No." Priya's expression shifted as she looked above Claire. "Then why does mine say forever?" Rebecca stood slowly. Above Priya, she saw forever too. Priya turned to Rebecca. Another forever. 3 women who had never shared a room before that afternoon stared at one another while every other clock in the basement continued counting toward the same moment. 3 hours, 26 minutes. Daniel's phone regained 1 bar of signal and downloaded a delayed message from Dr. Ward. He read it aloud. "Permanent readings aren't pairs." Claire looked at him. Daniel continued. "They're chains." At 1:02 p.m., the first map appeared. Researchers plotted every confirmed forever connection they could verify. Copenhagen linked to Nairobi. Nairobi linked to Seoul. Seoul linked to Auckland. Sydney linked to all 4 through people who had never met. The pattern did not resemble a network of soulmates. It resembled a circuit. Every person marked forever was connected to another person who was connected to another. Sometimes across continents, sometimes across generations. Dr. Ward sent Claire the map as soon as her phone regained service. She opened it in the basement. A thin line pulsed from her name to Rebecca's. Another from Rebecca to Priya. Another from Priya to a name Claire did not recognize. Frank Delaney. Across town, Frank's phone vibrated while he sat beside Thomas and baby Grace. He opened the same map. A line connected him to Priya Nair. He had never heard the name. Another line connected Thomas to Claire Morgan. Another connected Evelyn to Nadia Haddad. The chain kept expanding. Millions of ordinary people, each believing their clocks were private, were beginning to discover that their choices intersected with strangers they would never have thought mattered. At St. Catherine's, Priya stared at the map. "Why us?" Claire asked. Dr. Ward's message arrived as text because calls were failing. "We believe forever does not identify who will stay in your life. It identifies people whose decisions will propagate through yours." Rebecca read it aloud. Claire looked around the basement at teachers, parents, and children. Propagate into what? No answer came. Then every timer in the room changed. 3 hours became 47 minutes. Someone screamed. Priya looked at the emergency map. The gas exclusion zone had expanded. St. Catherine's was now inside it. Daniel tried the basement door. The handle moved, but the door did not open. Something heavy had fallen against it from the corridor. Parents rushed forward. They pushed. Nothing. Rebecca held Mia. Claire called emergency services. No connection. Priya looked toward the small ground-level ventilation window near the ceiling. Outside, the sky had taken on a faint yellow haze. 46 minutes. 45. Across Sydney, Frank Delaney stared at the line connecting his name to a schoolteacher he had never met. His old detective instincts returned before he had time to question them. He enlarged the map, read the location beside Priya's name, and stood. St. Catherine's. Thomas looked up. What about it? Frank was already moving. Someone there is running out of time. Evelyn followed. How do you know? Frank looked at forever above Thomas, then at the chain glowing on his phone. Because apparently they're not strangers anymore. 44 minutes remained when Frank Delaney stepped into the hospital lift. Evelyn followed him inside. Thomas stayed behind with Grace pressed against his chest, watching his grandfather disappear behind closing doors less than an hour after learning he existed. Frank. He pressed the ground floor button. Frank. What? You don't know this woman? I know. You don't know what's happening at that school? I know. You're 71 years old. That one I was aware of. Evelyn folded her arms. And you think you're going to do what exactly? Frank looked at the map on his phone. A glowing line ran from his name to Priya Nair. Beside hers, a number refreshed. 43 minutes, 18 seconds. I spent 22 years wishing I'd gone after someone when I still had the chance. The lift doors opened. I'm not doing it twice. At St. Catherine's, 43 minutes looked much shorter underground. The basement door still would not move. Daniel and two parents threw themselves against it again. Nothing. Again. They hit it together. The frame groaned. The obstruction outside did not. Claire stood on a chair beneath the ventilation window. The yellow haze outside had thickened enough to turn afternoon sunlight the color of an old photograph. "Can you smell anything?" Rebecca asked. Claire inhaled carefully. "No." "Is that good?" Priya answered before Claire could. "Not necessarily. Some gases don't smell." A mother immediately covered her child's mouth with her shirt. Panic moved through the basement. "Stop!" Priya's voice cut through it. She climbed onto a storage box. "Everyone listen to me. We don't know that anything has reached the building. We have 43 minutes according to something nobody understood 6 hours ago. Until somebody gives me better information, we treat that number as a warning, not a death sentence." A father pointed upward. "Easy for you to say. Yours says forever." Priya looked at Claire, then Rebecca, then back at him. "No. Mine says that my choices matter to somebody." She stepped down. "So do yours." Frank reached the hospital car park. His keys were already in his hand when his phone rang. "Thomas." Frank stopped. For one terrible second, he considered ignoring it. Then he answered. "What happened?" "Nothing." Frank exhaled. "Jesus, Thomas. You left." "Yes. You just found out I exist, and then you left." Frank closed his eyes. There were sentences that arrived disguised as ordinary words. That one was 22 years old. "I'm coming back." "What?" "I'm coming back." "But the school, I'll find another way." Frank turned toward the hospital. The clock above a woman walking toward him changed from 11 months to 11 years. Frank stopped. The woman kept walking. Another clock changed. A man beside the ticket machine went from 6 days to 4 years. Then Evelyn's number above Frank changed. 27 years became forever. Evelyn stared at him. "What did you just do?" Frank looked at his phone. The line to Priya remained, but a second line had appeared, running from Thomas Park to Claire Morgan. Frank finally understood. Going to the school himself had never been the only path. Back upstairs, Thomas was standing when Frank returned. "I thought you were going." "I was." Frank looked at Grace. No clock, no number, nothing. "I made the same mistake again." Thomas frowned. Frank continued. "I thought fixing the past meant running toward the thing I regretted. Maybe it means not creating the same regret with somebody else." Thomas looked at him for a long moment. "That's a very complicated way of saying you came back." "I'm old. We use extra words." Thomas almost smiled. Frank held out his phone. "Do you know Claire Morgan?" "No." "Apparently you will." Thomas stared at the line connecting his name to hers. "What am I supposed to do with that?" "I don't know. But I'm starting to think that's the point." Grace began to cry. Thomas shifted her against his shoulder. Frank's phone vibrated. Priya's countdown had increased. 42 minutes became 51. Somewhere across Sydney, something had changed. The change had begun with Nadia Haddad choosing the wrong road. Or at least, the road everyone else thought was wrong. Traffic west had stopped completely. Cars packed 3 lanes beneath flashing evacuation signs while emergency vehicles fought their way in the opposite direction. Sophie sat in the back beside her mother. who had not spoken since leaving the house. Layla watched Nadia's timer fall. 3 hours, 41 minutes, 3 hours, 39. "Mum, we're not moving." "I can see that." Nadia looked at the navigation screen, then at a side street. "What are you doing?" "Getting us out." The alert says west. The alert also assumes half of Sydney isn't trying to use the same road. She turned south. Layla grabbed the door handle. "Mum, trust me for 5 minutes." "That's a big ask." Nadia smiled despite herself. 4 minutes? Her timer gained 6. Layla noticed. Nadia did too. Neither said anything. 2 streets later, they found an ambulance trapped behind a delivery truck. The driver was outside arguing with a man whose abandoned car blocked the intersection. Nadia slowed. "Keep going," Sophie's mother whispered. It was the first thing she had said in 12 minutes. Nadia looked at the ambulance. "I can't." She parked. Layla stared at her. "What are you doing?" "Being annoying, apparently." Nadia got out. Within seconds, she was directing 3 strangers to push the abandoned car, while the ambulance driver climbed back inside. Layla watched from the passenger seat as her mother waved traffic backward, shouted at a van to mount the curb, and somehow convinced a furious delivery driver to move. The ambulance squeezed through. As it passed, the paramedic leaned on the horn once in thanks. Nadia returned to the car. Her timer above Layla had jumped from 3 hours to 9 years. Layla's mouth fell open. "Mum." Nadia saw her face. "What?" 9 years. Nadia sat very still. Sophie leaned forward. "What was it before?" 3 hours. Nobody spoke. Then the ambulance disappeared around the corner, heading east, towards St. Catherine's. Inside the basement, Daniel's phone found enough signal to receive a single emergency message. He held it above his head, moving slowly until one bar appeared. "I've got something." Everyone stopped talking. The message was from emergency services. "Gas dispersion model updated. Do not open external windows. Remain in sealed interior areas until evacuated." Daniel looked at the ventilation window Claire had been examining. A faint draft moved the dust beneath it. Priya climbed onto the chair. "It's not sealed." Mr. Collins found a roll of wide art tape in a cupboard. Parents tore plastic from storage tubs and passed it forward. They covered the vent. The moment the final edge was sealed, every ordinary countdown in the room gained 9 minutes. A sound moved through the basement that was half laugh, half sob. 9 minutes. A strip of plastic and children's art tape had just given 21 people 9 more minutes of future. Claire stared at the clocks. Ward was right. Rebecca held Mia against her. About trajectories, about choices. Claire looked at the taped window. The clocks didn't tell us the gas would kill us in 40 minutes. They told us that if nothing changed, 40 minutes was where our paths ended. Priya looked at forever above Claire. "So we changed something." "Yes." Daniel checked his own timer above Claire. It had increased again. 4 hours. Rebecca noticed Claire looking. "What does he say?" Claire hesitated. 4 hours. Daniel laughed without humor. "That's practically retirement compared to this morning." Claire looked at him. For the first time all day, the number did not feel like a verdict. It felt like information. Dangerous information. Useful information. Maybe those were the same thing. At the University Command Center, Elias Ward had stopped calling them clocks. On the wall behind him, hundreds of live reports were arranged beside maps, emergency feeds, and connection diagrams. "Trajectory indicators," he told the room. Nobody liked the name, but nobody had a better one. A researcher from Singapore appeared on the main screen. We're seeing the same effect. A ferry changed route after passengers reported simultaneous 6-minute readings. Every reading increased immediately. Another researcher spoke from Vancouver. Apartment fire. Neighbors evacuated a floor before the alarms activated because their mutual readings collapsed. 23 people out before ignition spread. Ward looked at the Forever network. Lines were appearing faster than the software could draw them. They're not predicting death, he said. They're exposing dependency. A statistician beside him shook her head. Dependency between people. Ward enlarged Sydney. Between decisions. He selected Claire Morgan. Lines spread outward. Rebecca Hart, Priya Nair, Thomas Park, Frank Delaney, Evelyn Delaney, Nadia Haddad. More names appeared beyond them. Some knew each other. Most did not. Ward zoomed out. Every action propagates. You miss a train, someone gets a seat, you make a phone call, someone leaves home 5 minutes later, you forgive somebody, they stay. You walk away, they take another road. We normally experience only our side of those consequences. The statistician stared at the map. And forever. Ward watched a new line appear between Nadia Haddad and Evelyn Delaney. Maybe forever means the consequence doesn't terminate with the relationship. Maybe it keeps traveling. Forever. Not the people. Ward looked at millions of lines spreading across the planet. The ripple. The ambulance Nadia had freed reached St. Catherine's 12 minutes earlier than its revised route had predicted. Paramedic Aaron Bell had no idea why he had turned down the school road. Dispatch had sent him toward a respiratory call 3 suburbs away, but the navigation system rerouted after another unit became available. As he passed St. Catherine's, the clock above his partner changed from 18 years to 36 minutes. Aaron slammed on the brakes. "What?" his partner shouted. "Your number." "What about it?" 36 minutes. His partner looked above Aaron, his face drained. "Yours too." They looked at the locked school gates. A handwritten sign flapped against the fence. "Children sheltering inside." Aaron grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, Unit 14 diverting to St. Catherine's. Possible trapped occupants." The radio crackled. "Negative 14. Remain unassigned." Aaron was already out of the vehicle. "Sorry," he said to nobody. The universe filed a stronger request. The first sound from the corridor was metal scraping across tile. Everyone in the basement froze. Daniel moved toward the door. "Hello?" A muffled voice answered. "Ambulance service?" The room erupted. Parents shouted. Children cried. Rebecca covered Mia's ears while laughing. Daniel and Mr. Collins pushed from inside as Aaron and his partner dragged a collapsed storage cabinet away from the other side. The door opened 6 centimeters, then 12, then enough for cold corridor air to rush through. "Don't leave the basement yet," Aaron warned. "Building safer sealed. We're checking an internal route to the western exit." Priya looked above him. 29 minutes. Above his partner, the same. "You're connected to this too." Aaron followed her gaze instinctively, though he could not see his own clock. "Lady, today I think everyone is." Ward's phone rang. "Claire." He answered immediately. "We're alive." He closed his eyes. "Good. An ambulance found us." Ward looked at the live incident map. "Unit 14. How did you know?" Ward traced the vehicle's route backward. It had been delayed at an intersection. Delayed, then freed. The location overlapped with a civilian traffic report. One name appeared in the metadata attached to a witness upload. Nadia Haddad. Ward stared at it. Nadia connected to Evelyn. Evelyn connected to Frank. Frank connected to Priya. Priya stood beside Claire. He felt suddenly cold. "Claire, I need you to listen to me." That's rarely followed by anything relaxing. "The ambulance that found you was only there. because somebody else changed its route. Okay, that person is already inside your forever chain. Claire looked at Priya and Rebecca. Who? Nadia Haddad. Layla had heard the name Claire Morgan once before that day, though she did not remember it until Ward's emergency broadcast reached every phone in the car. The message asked people with forever readings to voluntarily submit their visible connections to a central map. Layla opened it. Nadia's name was already there. A line ran from Nadia Haddad to Evelyn Delaney, Evelyn to Frank Delaney, Frank to Priya Nair, Priya to Claire Morgan, Claire to Thomas Park. Layla stared. Mum. Nadia kept driving. What now? You're on the map. That's never a sentence you want to hear. No, like the forever map. Sophie leaned over the seat. Who is she connected to? Layla followed the chain. Then she saw the school. St. Catherine's. Nadia looked at her. Layla's voice lowered. The ambulance we helped. It went there. Sophie understood first. You helped them? Nadia shook her head. We moved a car, and the ambulance went to the school. We don't know if... Layla's phone refreshed. An official update appeared beneath St. Catherine's. Emergency crew on site. Occupants located. Nadia stopped speaking. Sophie's mother began crying again, but this time the sound was different. She looked at Nadia from the back seat. My husband died this morning. Nadia met her eyes in the mirror. I know. And you moved a car. Nadia said nothing. And because you moved a car, somebody else's child might not. The words settled over all four of them. Layla looked above her mother. 9 years became forever. Nadia could not see it. Layla could. She reached across the console and took her mother's hand. Nadia squeezed back. At St. Catherine's, Aaron found the western stairwell clear, but the exit beyond it opened toward the edge of the exclusion zone. Dispatch ordered everyone to remain sheltered until a hazardous materials team arrived. 28 minutes remained, then 27. Nobody liked waiting anymore. Waiting felt like choosing. A father demanded they leave. Another insisted the clocks proved staying was safer because they had increased after sealing the vent. Arguments rose. Priya stood between them. The clocks react to what we do. That doesn't mean we understand why. Then what's the point? The first father snapped. The point is we still have to think. Claire watched Priya. Forever remained above her. Rebecca saw it too. Perhaps that was what permanent connection actually looked like. Not certainty, responsibility. Mia tugged Rebecca's sleeve. Mum? Yeah, sweetheart. Dad's number changed. Rebecca looked toward her ex-husband. Above him, the reading she had seen earlier, forever through Mia's eyes, according to her daughter, was no longer what Mia saw. What does it say? 17 minutes. Rebecca went still. Her ex-husband noticed. What? Mia pointed toward him. 17 minutes. His face collapsed. No, 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 no. He moved toward the stairs. Aaron blocked him. Sir, you can't go outside. My daughter sees 17 minutes, and everyone else sees 26. So mine ends first. Mia began crying. Rebecca grabbed his arm. Stop. You heard her. Yes. Then let me out. Rebecca looked at the man she had spent years learning how not to love. Then she looked at their daughter. Maybe leaving is what makes it reach zero. He stopped. Nobody moved. 17 minutes became 16:59. Rebecca's voice shook. We keep treating the number like an appointment. What if it's a warning about the choice we're about to make because we saw it? Claire understood. The clocks could create the future they appeared to predict. Fear could become the mechanism. A low number made someone run. Running put them in danger. The danger made the number low, a perfect loop. "Sit down," Rebecca told him. "For Mia." He looked at his daughter, then sat. The number stopped falling. 16 minutes, 42 seconds, 16:42, 16:42. Mia blinked. "It stuck." Rebecca laughed through tears. "Good, let it be confused." At the command center, Ward saw similar reports arriving from around the world. People had begun testing the phenomenon. Some tests were harmless, others were not. A live streamer stepped into traffic to see whether his friend's timer changed. A couple threatened to separate just to watch their numbers move. Employers demanded workers compare readings before dangerous shifts. Hospitals argued over whether countdowns should influence triage. Governments issued warnings against using the clocks as evidence in criminal investigations, custody disputes, insurance decisions, or medical prognosis. Humanity had been given access to consequences without being given wisdom. Ward watched the data pour in and realized the clocks might not destroy civilization by reaching zero. They could destroy it by making people terrified to choose anything at all. His screen flashed. St. Catherine's. Every timer had changed again. 24 minutes became 7. Ward stood so quickly his chair rolled backward. What happened? The gas dispersion model updated. A pressure failure beneath the eastern block had redirected the leak through underground service channels. The school basement was no longer the safest part of the building. It was becoming the worst. Ward called Claire. No signal. He called Aaron's ambulance radio through dispatch. Nothing. He stared at the forever chain: Priya, Frank, Evelyn, Nadia, Thomas, Claire. Connections were not communication channels. They could not carry messages, but decisions could. At St. Vincent's, Grace would not stop crying. Thomas paced the maternity room while Frank attempted every useless grandfather technique he could invent. Maybe she's hungry. She ate. Nappy. Changed. Too warm. Frank. Right, sorry. Evelyn stood by the window staring at the forever above Frank. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost. Hello? A woman spoke rapidly. Is this Evelyn Delaney? My name is Dr. Maya Chen. I'm with the university emergency team. We believe you're part of a connection chain involving St. Catherine's School. Evelyn looked at Frank. Yes. We can't reach the people inside. Do you know Nadia Haddad? No. You may be able to find her through the public connection registry. We need anyone in the chain who can contact anyone closer to the school. Evelyn opened the map. Nadia Haddad. A public profile had been voluntarily attached minutes earlier. One phone number. Evelyn called. Nadia answered through the car speakers. Hello? Nadia Haddad. Yes. You don't know me. My name is Evelyn Delaney. Layla's eyes widened. She knew the name from the map. Mum. Nadia raised a finger. Evelyn continued. The university says we're connected. St. Catherine's is in immediate danger, and they can't reach the basement. Nadia pulled to the side of the road. What do they need? They need them out. Now. Layla was already searching the school group chat. I know someone who knows someone there. Sophie looked at her. Who? Mia's brother is in a group with a girl from my school. Her fingers flew across the screen. A chain of teenagers, siblings, parents, and classmates began moving the message faster than any emergency system could. Leave the basement. West stairwell. Now. Inside St. Catherine's, Mia's father's phone vibrated. One message had arrived through a family group chat from his teenage son. Dad, get out now. West stairs. Gas moved underground. He stared at it. How does he know? Aaron took the phone. Another message arrived from dispatch at the same moment. Immediate evacuation. Western exit. The clocks dropped to 5 minutes. Move! Priya shouted. The basement transformed. Children paired with adults. Aaron took Noah. Mr. Collins counted heads. Rebecca lifted Mia. Daniel grabbed the emergency bag. Claire stayed at the rear with Priya. 5 minutes became 4:52. 4:41. They climbed. The western corridor was dark. Emergency lights pulsed red along the floor. Somewhere beneath them, metal groaned. Aaron reached the exit and pushed. It opened. Fresh air. Go! People spilled into the afternoon. Police beyond the fence screamed for them to move west. 4 minutes became 12. 12 became 40. 40 became 6 years. Every person who crossed the gate watched futures explode back into existence above the people they loved. Rebecca reached the footpath carrying Mia. Her ex-husband followed. Mia looked above him and screamed, but this time she was laughing. 38 years! He dropped to his knees and held both of them. Rebecca let him. Claire emerged beside Daniel. His number above her climbed past 4 years, then 11, then 23. Daniel looked at her face. Good number. Claire smiled. Ask me later. Priya was last out. The instant she crossed the gate, Claire's forever disappeared. Priya's did too. Rebecca's vanished. For a second, all 3 women saw ordinary numbers above one another. 8 years, 21 years, 4 months. Then the numbers changed again. Not downward, sideways. Forever moved from Claire to Daniel, from Priya to Noah, from Rebecca to Mia's father. Across the city, Frank watched forever vanish above Evelyn and appear above Grace, though the baby still displayed nothing to anyone else. Layla watched it move from Nadia to Sophie. The network was rearranging itself in real time. Ward stared at the global map as millions of permanent lines broke and reformed. He finally saw what the data had been trying to tell him. They're not chains, he whispered. The statistician beside him looked over. What? Ward zoomed out until Earth disappeared beneath light. They're routes. Claire's phone rang. Ward. This time the connection held. You okay? He asked. Claire looked around at children being loaded into ambulances, parents crying, strangers hugging people whose names they had not known an hour earlier. Yeah. Claire, forever changed. We noticed. It isn't identifying permanent people. It's identifying the current route through which a consequence will travel. Claire watched Daniel help an elderly parent over the curb. So when the consequence changes, the route changes with it. And where is it going? Ward did not answer immediately. On his screen, thousands of forever routes were converging. Different countries, different people, different choices, all moving toward the same point in time. That's the problem. Claire's smile disappeared. What problem? Ward enlarged the timeline. Every major forever route we've mapped has started converging on tonight. Claire looked at the sky. Afternoon light had begun to soften over Sydney, as though the day itself had no idea anything was wrong. What time tonight? Ward swallowed. 11:59. Around Claire, clocks continued changing. Years became months. Months became decades. Forever jumped from stranger to stranger, carrying invisible consequences through lives that had never considered themselves connected. The clocks had seemed personal that morning, a private measurement of who mattered, who stayed, who left, who lived. They had been wrong. The clocks were never measuring relationships. They were measuring reach, and somewhere ahead of them, every ripple was heading toward the same shore. 6 hours and 57 minutes remained until midnight. Ward was trying to answer exactly that. At the University Command Center, every wall had become a map. Sydney, London, Lagos, Mumbai, São Paulo, Seoul. Each was covered in threads of light representing active forever routes. Every few seconds, one disappeared and another formed somewhere else. The network moved like weather. Ward no longer believed any individual line mattered by itself. What mattered was direction. Every route, regardless of where it began, seemed to be feeding decisions toward the same minute. 11:59 p.m., not midnight, 1 minute before it. The distinction bothered him. Dr. Maya Chen stood beside him with a tablet full of international data. Could it be symbolic? She asked. End of the day? Ward shook his head. Then why not midnight? Maybe the system needs 1 minute for the consequence. What consequence? Ward enlarged the timeline. That's what we don't know. Maya studied the map. What happens at 11:59? According to current models, nothing unusual. No launches, elections, markets, power grid events. Nothing global. Maya looked at him. Then maybe it isn't an event. Ward stared at millions of lines collapsing toward one point. Maybe it's a choice. Across Sydney, people had already begun surrendering choices to the clocks. A restaurant refused to seat a couple after one partner saw 12 minutes above the other. A construction crew abandoned a site because 3 workers shared the same 40-minute reading. A mother removed her son from hospital against medical advice after his timer increased when she moved him toward the exit. A man stood outside his former wife's house for 2 hours because forever appeared above her, and he decided that meant destiny wanted them reunited. Police removed him. His clock increased when they did. Daniel returned to the ambulance and held out a bottle of water to Claire. 23 years, she said. Excuse me, your timer. Ah. He sat beside her. Is that good? Better than 51 minutes. High praise. Claire almost smiled. Daniel looked at the phone in her hand. Ward? Everything converges tonight. Everything as in... He gestured vaguely at the entire planet. Apparently. Daniel considered that. Do I get a vote in whether we participate? Claire looked above him. 23 years, 4 months. I'm starting to think none of us understands what participation means. Rebecca heard that and looked down at Mia. Her daughter was coloring on the back of an emergency information sheet, as though almost dying before lunch had simply become another school activity. Mum? Yeah? If the clocks know what happens, why don't they just tell us? Rebecca stared at her. That's a very good question. Mia kept drawing. Because numbers are annoying. Rebecca laughed. Also true. Mia held up the page. She had drawn people connected by enormous arrows. This one's you, this one's Dad, this one's Claire, this one's Miss Priya, and this one's me. Why are you in the middle? Mia shrugged. Because somebody has to be. At 3:41 p.m., Ward received the first confirmed report of a timer being deliberately manipulated for profit. A trading firm in New York had asked employees to monitor countdowns above executives while investment decisions were announced. When a particular merger proposal caused several timers to collapse, the firm sold its position before the news became public. 20 minutes later, the merger failed. The firm made $43 million. Markets reacted instantly. Within an hour, financial institutions around the world were attempting the same thing. Regulators halted trading in 3 countries. Humans had discovered a way to glimpse consequences, and naturally, someone had monetized it before dinner. Then came medicine. A surgeon in Berlin delayed an operation because her husband's timer fell whenever she entered theater. The patient survived after another surgeon took over. A hospital in Toronto refused to discharge a man because his daughter's reading dropped whenever he approached the exit. He suffered a cardiac arrest 20 minutes later while still inside and was revived. Stories spread faster than evidence. By 4 o'clock, people were demanding doctors consult clocks before treatment. Ward watched confidence in ordinary expertise collapse in real time. This is getting dangerous, Maya said. It was dangerous at 8:01, Ward replied. Now it's organized. Frank Delaney had returned to Thomas's room and discovered that being present was harder than chasing a crisis. Grace slept between them. Evelyn sat by the window. Nobody knew what to say. Frank had spent decades imagining conversations with the son he lost. He had never imagined starting from scratch with a grandson. What did Dad do for work? Thomas asked eventually. Frank looked up. Your father? Thomas nodded. Mechanic, mostly. He could fix anything except his own car. Thomas smiled. Mum said he was good with engines. Frank froze. She talked about him. Not much, but sometimes. Frank swallowed. What else did she say? Thomas thought. That he was stubborn. Evelyn laughed. Frank did too. Above Thomas, Frank saw forever again. The word shifted while he watched. Forever dissolved and became 7 hours. Frank stood. Thomas noticed. What? Your number changed. To what? 7 hours. Evelyn checked. She saw the same. Thomas looked at Grace. Is that bad? Frank remembered Priya, the school, the roots. Not necessarily. His phone vibrated. The public forever map had changed. Thomas was no longer connected to Claire. Instead, his route now pointed to a woman named Nadia Petrova in Kiev. Frank stared at it. Who the hell is Nadia Petrova? Thomas leaned over. Maybe somebody we're about to matter to. Ward's team had begun calling these shifts handoffs. A forever route would hold between two people until a consequential decision passed through them, then jump elsewhere. Some handoffs occurred after dramatic moments. Others followed tiny ones. A woman in Brisbane chose to answer an unknown number, and her forever route moved to the caller's brother in Manila. A teenager in Osaka returned a lost wallet, and the route shifted to the wallet owner's employer in London. A taxi driver in Cairo missed a turn and connected to a nurse in Madrid. The network was not mapping relationships, it was mapping transmission. At 4:08 p.m., Ward found something worse. The closer the world moved toward 11:59, the shorter the average handoff became. In the morning, forever pairs had lasted hours. By afternoon, some lasted only minutes. The network was accelerating. Maya plotted the rate. It's compressing. Like what? Like information reaching a destination. Ward looked at the global map. Or like a fuse burning. Layla sat in Nadia's car with Sophie beside her and watched strangers on social media compare clocks as if they were sports scores. Some users posted videos celebrating century-long readings. Others begged strangers to tell them why their numbers were low. A new app called Forecast had already launched, promising anonymous timer analysis for $19.99. People are insane, Layla said. Nadia glanced at her. People are scared. Same thing today. Sophie's mother sat quietly in the back, holding the photograph Nadia had taken from the mantelpiece. Her husband's face smiled from another morning, when the future had still been invisible. Layla's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Evelyn Delaney. Thank you for answering earlier. The school is safe because your mum helped that ambulance get through. Layla read it aloud. Nadia kept her eyes on the road. Tell her the paramedics did the saving. Mum? What? You can accept one nice thing. Nadia sighed. Fine. Tell her you're welcome. Layla typed. As she pressed send, the word above Nadia changed from forever to 4 years. At the same instant, Sophie gasped. What? Layla asked. Sophie pointed above her mother. Mine changed too. Her mother looked terrified. To what? Forever. Everyone in the car fell silent. Sophie's mother clutched the photograph. Why me? Nobody knew. Then her phone rang. The caller ID displayed St. Vincent's Hospital. She answered immediately, fearing some impossible second tragedy. "Hello?" A nurse asked for a name none of them recognized. The call had been placed to the wrong number. Sophie's mother almost hung up. Then she heard a baby crying in the background and the nurse mutter, "Sorry, we were trying to reach the family of Grace Park." Sophie leaned forward. "Grace?" Layla looked at the map. Thomas Park. Baby Grace. The chain had found them again. "Wait," Layla said. "Don't hang up." Sophie's mother stared at her. "Why?" "Just ask if Thomas Park is there." She did. The nurse hesitated, then confirmed he was. Nadia pulled over. Layla opened the connection map. Thomas Park's route had disappeared from Sydney minutes earlier, but another line now ran through Sophie's mother. "This is impossible." Nadia looked at the screen. "Today, that's not really evidence against anything." Sophie's mother spoke into the phone. "I don't know you, but apparently someone named Thomas Park may need to hear from us." The nurse refused to transfer a stranger directly to a patient, which was one of the few normal decisions anyone made that afternoon. But the message reached Thomas through Evelyn, who had already registered their family on the voluntary connection system. When Thomas called back, Sophie's mother answered. Two people who had never met stared at each other's names on their screens. "I think we're connected," she said. Thomas looked above Frank. 7 hours. Apparently. Neither knew what came next. Then Sophie's mother saw the photograph in her lap. Her husband, David, was standing beside an old motorbike. She looked more closely. The registration sticker, the workshop logo on the tank, Delaney Motor Repairs. "Thomas," she said slowly, "was your father a mechanic?" Thomas stopped breathing. Frank looked up. "Why?" "My husband used to talk about a mechanic named Tom years ago. He said the man fixed his bike after an accident and refused to take payment because David was broke." Frank stood. "Where?" She named a suburb. Frank's face changed. "That was my son." The room at St. Vincent's went silent. Sophie's mother began crying. "My husband said that mechanic saved his life. The brakes had failed. He found something wrong nobody else had noticed." Frank sat down slowly. Thomas looked at him. 22 years of grief had reduced his father to an argument and an empty chair. Now, through a widow he had never met, another piece returned. "Dad helped him?" Thomas asked. Frank nodded. "Sounds like him." Sophie's mother looked at David's photograph. "Then Sophie exists because your father stopped my husband from getting back on that bike." Layla stared at the clock above Sophie. Forever appeared. Nadia saw another above Sophie's mother. Thomas saw forever above Frank again. The routes reshuffled across the map. One repair 25 years earlier had become a marriage, a daughter, a friendship, a car ride, an ambulance, and 21 people escaping a school basement. Nobody had planned any of it. Nobody had even known most of it happened. The ripple had traveled for decades before the clocks made it visible. Ward received their report 6 minutes later and stopped speaking halfway through reading it. Maya watched him. What? He projected the chain onto the wall. Frank's son repaired David's motorbike decades earlier. David survived. Sophie was born. Sophie befriended Layla. Layla traveled with Nadia. Nadia cleared an ambulance. The ambulance reached St. Catherine's. Priya, Claire, Rebecca, Mia, and the others survived. "The routes aren't just future-facing," Ward said. "They're exposing consequences that began years ago." Maya looked at the timeline. Then forever isn't a forecast. It's continuity. That changed the 1159 problem. Ward rebuilt the model using historical links instead of only present decisions. The convergence became clearer. Every active forever route was not pointing toward one location. It was pointing toward one question. Millions of chains were terminating at the same minute because, at 11:59, something would force an enormous number of people to make the same kind of decision simultaneously. Maya read the model twice. What decision? Ward enlarged the behavioral categories associated with major timer changes. Stay, leave, answer, ignore, help, refuse, trust, protect. Choice under uncertainty, he said. That's the common factor. At 5:12 p.m., the world learned about the convergence. Not from Ward. Someone leaked a screenshot from the command center. Within minutes, every major network was reporting that forever routes appeared to intersect at 11:59 p.m. Governments denied any known event was scheduled. Conspiracy theories filled the gap. Alien contact, Judgment Day, a global blackout, a simulation reset, nuclear launch, the end of time. People began canceling evening plans. Roads filled again. Churches, temples, and mosques overflowed. Airports jammed. Families drove across cities simply to be together before midnight. The clocks reacted violently. Millions of timers changed because millions of people changed their plans. Some increased, some collapsed. Forever routes jumped so rapidly the global map became almost unreadable. Ward watched the consequence of the leak feed back into the phenomenon they were studying. "We've contaminated the system," Maya said. Ward shook his head. There was never a clean system. People knowing about the clocks was always part of the future the clocks were showing. Claire returned home just before 6. Daniel came with her. Neither discussed whether that was a good idea. He made tea because there was nothing else useful to do. Claire stood at the window, watching traffic pour away from the city. "What would you be doing tonight if none of this happened?" Daniel asked. "Probably avoiding calling my mother." "Why?" "Because she asks whether I'm happy, and I don't like questions with follow-ups." Daniel handed her the mug. "Are you?" Claire looked above him. 31 years. "Today? Generally." She considered lying. The timer dropped by 2 years. Daniel saw her expression. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Claire," she laughed. "Apparently the universe has started fact-checking me." She called her mother. The conversation lasted 7 minutes. Claire apologized for missing 3 calls the previous week. Her mother apologized for making every conversation feel like an interrogation. Neither resolved their entire relationship. They simply stayed on the phone long enough to stop pretending there was unlimited time. When Claire hung up, Daniel's timer had climbed to 43 years. Claire stared at it. "You didn't do anything." "I made tea." "Exactly." She understood. His number had changed because she had. At 7:26 p.m., Ward's model finally produced a location. Not one city, not one building, a digital location. The convergence point was the global emergency broadcast network, the system governments could use to push the same message to nearly every connected device on Earth. Maya stared at the result. What happens at 11:59? Ward pulled the scheduled cue. Nothing. Then one hidden entry appeared. No sender, no originating agency. Timestamp locked. 23:59. The same impossible architecture that had delivered the first message at 8 that morning had inserted another broadcast. Ward opened the payload. It was encrypted. "Can we stop it?" Maya asked. "We don't even know where it's coming from." "Can we shut the network down?" Ward looked at the forever routes. Almost everyone now pointed, directly or indirectly, toward people whose decisions would determine whether devices remained connected at 11:59. Network engineers, ministers, emergency coordinators. telecom executives, ordinary users deciding whether to switch their phones off. Maybe that's the choice. Receive the message or don't. Maybe. At 8:03 p.m., the first government announced it would disconnect from the global alert network before 11:59. Timers across the country collapsed. The announcement was reversed 12 minutes later. Many recovered. Other governments saw the data and hesitated. The debate became global. Leave the system online and allow an unknown force to reach billions of people, or shut it down and possibly prevent whatever the clocks were steering toward. Every option altered the numbers. There was no neutral choice. Ward called Claire. She answered on the first ring. "Please tell me the world isn't ending." "I can't." Strong opening. "There's another message scheduled for 11:59. Claire sat down. Daniel watched her. "From who?" "Same answer as this morning." "Nobody." "Exactly." Ward told her about the network shutdown debate. "And the clocks?" "They're reacting to whether people will receive it." Claire looked at the darkening sky. "Do we know what the message says?" "No." "Then why would anyone leave the system on?" Ward was quiet. "Because every model where the message reaches fewer people produces more zeros." Claire stopped breathing. Daniel crouched beside her. "How many?" she asked. Ward looked at the simulation. "Billions. And if everyone receives it?" "We don't know." Claire laughed once, without humor. "So that's it? Trust the mysterious thing that hijacked every device on Earth because the magic numbers tell us to?" "I didn't say trust it." "Then what are you saying?" Ward looked at the first message preserved on the wall. "You have 24 hours remaining." "I'm saying maybe we've misunderstood what the 24 hours were for." At 10:48 p.m., the main characters of the day were scattered across Sydney, but no longer felt separate. Frank sat beside Thomas and Grace. Evelyn had Sophie and Nadia on speakerphone. Layla texted Claire through the public connection registry. Priya joined from home after finally delivering Noah to his parents. Rebecca sat with Mia and her father. Daniel remained beside Claire. Ward watched all of them appear as nodes on the map. Not because they were special, because everyone was a node. Their chain was simply one thread among billions. 11 minutes before midnight, the argument reached its final form. Governments could not agree whether to disconnect. Telecom providers prepared for both outcomes. People were told they could switch their own devices off if they wished. Across the world, phones sat in hands. Power buttons waited beneath thumbs. Timers above, loved ones dropped or climbed with each private decision. Claire's phone displayed a new emergency advisory from Ward's team. "We cannot confirm the source or intent of the 11:59 message. Current data indicates mass disconnection correlates with sharp increases in zero readings. Individual choice remains yours." Daniel looked at Claire. "What are you going to do?" She held the power button. The shutdown slider appeared. Above Daniel, 43 years became 9 minutes. Claire stared at it. "That's not fair." "What?" "The clock. What does it say?" 9 minutes. Daniel looked at the phone. "Then turn it off if you want to." "And if that kills you?" "You don't know that it does." "Exactly." Daniel sat beside her. "Claire, if you only make choices because you're terrified of losing me, then whatever this thing is has already taken over." She looked at him. His timer held at 9 minutes. "So what do I do?" "Choose what you believe, not what the number threatens." Across Sydney, Frank told Thomas the same thing in different words. Nadia told Layla. Priya told Noah's mother. Rebecca told Mia's father. Nobody knew they were repeating one another. At 11:57 p.m., forever routes stopped moving for the first time all day. Every permanent line froze. Ward watched the global map become still. Billions of connections held their positions. "Why did it stop?" Maya whispered. Ward looked at the countdown. "Because we've reached the decision." At 11:58 p.m., the world became quiet in the strangest way possible. Not silent, quiet. People stopped arguing. News anchors stopped speculating. Governments stopped issuing updates because there was nothing left to announce. Phones remained on in some hands and dark in others. Claire dismissed the shutdown slider. Daniel's timer jumped from 8 minutes to forever. She almost laughed. "What?" he asked. "Nothing." She placed the phone on the table. "I chose." Ward watched the final seconds. 20, 19, 18. The encrypted payload remained sealed. He could still order the local network disconnected. His hand hovered over the control. Maya did not tell him what to do. No one could. 10, 9, 8. Across the world, people looked at strangers, partners, children, parents, enemies, co-workers, and people they had only met because the clocks forced their lives to intersect. 5, 4, 3. Claire reached for Daniel's hand. Frank held Grace's tiny fingers. Nadia squeezed Layla's shoulder. Priya closed her eyes. Rebecca held Mia. Ward let his hand fall away from the switch. At exactly 11:59 p.m., every connected device on Earth vibrated. The clocks above every person vanished, not dropped, not reached zero, vanished. For the first time since 8 that morning, people looked at one another without seeing the future. Screens turned black. A single sentence appeared. Claire read it. Ward read it. Frank read it aloud beside his grandson. Nadia whispered it in the car. Priya stood alone in her kitchen and began to cry. The message contained only 8 words. "You were never counting down to the end." Then a second line appeared. "You were counting down to a choice." For 3 seconds after the second message appeared, the world did nothing. No clocks hovered above anyone. No numbers offered instructions. No forever routes suggested who mattered next. Billions of people simply stared at 8 words they had spent the entire day unknowingly approaching. You were counting down to a choice. Claire read them until the letters blurred. Daniel's hand was still wrapped around hers. "What choice?" he whispered. Claire looked at the empty space above his head. For the first time all day, she had no answer hiding there. At the University Command Center, Ward's screens erupted. The encrypted payload had not finished. A third line appeared globally. "At midnight, you may keep the clocks, or you may let them go." Then a fourth. "The choice will be collective." Maya Chen stopped breathing. Around the room, researchers stared at one another. Ward looked at the clock on the wall. 53 seconds until midnight. "That's not enough time," Maya said. Ward almost laughed. "Maybe that's intentional." Every connected device changed. 2 options filled the screen. Keep. Let go. No explanation, no terms, no warning about what either choice would mean. Claire's thumb hovered above the glass. Daniel stared at his own phone. "Do we know how it counts?" "No." "Majority?" "No." "What happens if we tie?" "Daniel." "Right, sorry." 40 seconds. Claire thought of the school basement, the taped ventilation window, the ambulance Nadia had freed, the people saved because numbers had warned them before ordinary information could. Then she thought of the father who nearly ran outside because his daughter saw 17 minutes. The traders, the stalker, the hospitals, the terror. The clocks had saved lives. They had also taught humanity how quickly certainty could become a cage. Frank looked from the choice on his phone to Grace, sleeping against Thomas. "Keep them," Evelyn said quietly. Frank turned. "You sure?" We knew the school was in danger because of them. Thomas looked at his daughter. And what does she grow up in if we keep them? Evelyn had no answer. Every boyfriend judged by a number, Thomas continued. Every job, every trip, every time she walks out the door, someone checks whether she's still got years left. Frank remembered the last words he had said to his son. If clocks had existed then, would he have chased him? Or would he have watched a number above his head and mistaken it for permission to wait? 28 seconds. Nadia's car was parked beneath a streetlight. Layla held her phone between both hands. Sophie and her mother sat behind them. "Keep," Sophie said. Her mother looked at her. "Why?" "Dad might still be alive if we'd had them yesterday." The sentence hurt everyone in the car. Nadia did not challenge it. Sophie's mother looked down at David's photograph. "Maybe." Sophie began crying. "How can you say maybe?" "Because yesterday I would have seen a number above him, and maybe I would have taken him to hospital. Or maybe I would have spent every day before yesterday terrified whenever it changed." She touched the photograph. "Knowing when you might lose someone isn't the same as knowing how to love them." Priya stood in her kitchen with Molly on video call. "What are you choosing?" Molly asked. Priya stared at keep and let go. "I don't know." "You always know." "Apparently not." She thought of Noah beneath his desk, building a circle of magnetic letters because adults had given him a world frightening enough to require protection. She thought of the moment every child's timer became 4 hours. Without that warning, would they have moved downstairs? Would they have survived? 20 seconds. If I let them go and someone dies tomorrow who could have been warned today, Molly finished the thought. "You'll blame yourself." Priya nodded. "And if you keep them?" Priya looked at her reflection in the dark kitchen window. Maybe everyone spends the rest of their lives blaming themselves for every number that falls. Ward did not vote immediately. He watched the global response counter begin filling. Keep climbed first, 62%, 64, 67. Fear was fast. Let go followed more slowly, 33, 34. The data was anonymous, but geography emerged in patterns. Regions hit by disasters overwhelmingly chose keep. Communities where clock-related violence had occurred chose let go. Hospitals divided, parents divided, couples divided while sitting beside each other. 10 seconds remained. Maya looked at Ward. "What are you choosing?" He stared at a phenomenon he had spent all day trying to understand. "For once, I don't think knowing more gives me the right answer." Claire's phone showed keep at 61%, 7 seconds. Daniel selected let go. Claire looked at him. "You didn't even hesitate." "I did, all day." 5 seconds. Claire thought about Daniel's timer dropping when she lied to herself. She thought about calling her mother because a number frightened her into honesty. The conversation had mattered, but would it have mattered less if she had made it without being threatened by the future? 4. She pressed let go. 3. Frank pressed let go. Thomas did the same. Evelyn chose keep. Nadia chose let go. Layla chose keep. Sophie chose keep. Her mother chose let go. Priya closed her eyes and pressed let go. 2, 1. Midnight arrived. Every screen went black. The global result disappeared before anyone could read it. Claire waited. Nothing. Daniel refreshed his phone. Nothing. Ward's servers lost the entire connection data set at once. Every forever route vanished from storage. Every screenshot remained. Every human memory remained. But the live system was gone. Maya whispered, "Which side won?" Ward looked at the empty map. "I don't know." Then every device on Earth displayed one final line. Neither. Confusion traveled faster than panic. Another sentence appeared. The choice was never which future you wanted. It was whether you would surrender the choice to the future. Ward stepped closer to the screen. Claire read aloud from her apartment. Frank read silently beside Grace. Priya covered her mouth. Then came another line. You were given certainty. You used it to save. You used it to control. You used it to love. You used it to fear. The message paused. You were human with it, as you were human without it. Maya stared at Ward. It's judging us. Ward shook his head. No. How can you know that? He looked at the wording. Because it didn't say we failed. The next line appeared as if answering him. There was no correct answer. The room became silent. Ward felt something inside him loosen. All day, scientists, governments, and ordinary people had assumed the clocks were a test with a solution, a puzzle designed to reward the clever. But perhaps the cruelest part had been their belief that uncertainty itself was a flaw to eliminate. The final prompt appeared. The clocks will end. What remains is what you did while you could see them. Then every screen returned to normal. No countdown, no map, no voice, no explanation of who had created the phenomenon or whether anyone had created it at all. At 12:01 a.m., humanity was returned to the same condition it had occupied at 7:59 that morning. Nobody knew how long they had with anyone. The difference was that now they remembered what knowing had done to them. Claire stood beside the window. Sydney was strangely loud. Car horns. People shouting from balconies. Somewhere nearby, somebody cheered. Somewhere else, somebody screamed. Daniel looked above Claire out of habit. Empty air. She caught him. Looking for something? Maybe. See anything? You. Claire rolled her eyes. That was awful. I had 1 minute to prepare. She laughed, and this time there was no number to reward her for it. That felt better than she expected. Her phone rang. Mum, Claire answered immediately. Hi, her mother's voice shook. Are they gone? Yeah. Do you know how long we had? Claire closed her eyes. She had never asked. All day she had somehow avoided seeing the number above her mother. No. Good. Claire smiled. Yeah, I think so too. They stayed on the phone without needing the universe to tell them whether the conversation mattered. At St. Vincent's, Frank asked Thomas if he could hold Grace. Thomas hesitated only a moment before placing her into his arms. Frank supported her head with hands that had arrested people, repaired fences, buried a son, and spent 22 years carrying regret. Grace opened her eyes. Hello, Frank whispered. I'm your... He stopped. Thomas smiled. Great-grandfather. Frank laughed softly. That's terrible news for both of us. Grace yawned. There was no clock above her. There never had been. Frank wondered whether that had been the clue all along. A life at its beginning had no need to know how every connection would end. Evelyn stood beside them. You chose let go, she said. Frank nodded. You chose keep. Yep. You angry? Should I be? Frank considered it. Apparently we've had enough of letting numbers decide who belongs together. Evelyn smiled. Thomas watched them and realized that before that morning, he had possessed no grandfather and no great-aunt. By midnight, he had both. The clocks had disappeared, but the consequences had not. In Nadia's car, Sophie finally asked the question everyone had avoided. If Dad's clock had been there yesterday, what do you think it would have said? Her mother looked at the photograph for a long time. I don't know. What if it said one day? Then I hope I would have spent the day with him. What if it said 20 years? She smiled through tears. Then I hope I would have spent the day with him. Sophie leaned against her shoulder. Nadia looked at Layla. Layla looked back. No number hung between them. Nadia reached across the console. Layla took her hand anyway. At 12:18 a.m., Priya received a message from Noah's mother. It contained a photograph. Noah was asleep in bed, surrounded by the magnetic letters he had carried home from school. He had arranged them on his bedside table before falling asleep. Priya zoomed in. The letters spelled tomorrow. She laughed so suddenly she startled herself. Molly was still on video call. What? Priya turned the screen. Molly smiled. Smart kid. Priya nodded, terrifyingly. The next morning would later become one of the most studied mornings in human history. Not because the clocks returned. They didn't. Because people behaved differently. Emergency departments saw record numbers of precautionary checkups. Estranged relatives received calls. Resignation emails were sent. Proposals happened anyway. So did breakups. Millions deleted the photographs they had taken of timers. Millions more saved them forever. Some people claimed the experience proved destiny existed. Others claimed it proved the opposite. Religions interpreted it. Scientists modeled it. Governments investigated it. Conspiracy theories multiplied. Humanity did what humanity always did with something impossible. It turned it into stories. Ward remained at the command center until almost 2 in the morning. Most researchers had gone home. Maya placed 2 coffees beside him. You still think there's something left in the data? There's always something left in the data. That's a yes. Ward opened the archive. The live routes were gone, but local backups contained fragments from the final seconds before midnight. Maya sat beside him. What are we looking for? The source. You think we can find it? Ward shook his head. Probably not. Then why are we still here? He smiled. Because I'm human without the clocks too. They reconstructed the final network frame. Billions of routes frozen at 11:57 p.m. Ward expected noise. Instead, once plotted chronologically, the lines formed a structure, not geographically, temporally. Each forever handoff traced backward through prior consequences. Nadia to the ambulance, Sophie to David, David to Frank's son, Frank to Thomas, Claire to Rebecca, Priya to Noah. Millions of chains folded into older chains. Maya stared at the display. How far back does it go? Ward ran the model. Years, decades, centuries where records allowed. The pattern did not stop. They fed historical population data into the gaps. The network expanded backward beyond digital records, beyond photographs, beyond census files. Every life depended on choices made by people who never knew the people those choices would eventually create. A missed ship, a survived illness, a marriage, a war, a stranger sharing food, someone taking a different road. Ward zoomed farther out. This can't be accurate, Maya whispered. Why? Because if the model is right, there isn't a first forever route inside the data set. Meaning? Ward stared at the screen. Every consequence came from another consequence. Maya leaned back. So what caused the clocks? Ward did not answer. The question had followed them all day, but suddenly it felt smaller. If the clocks had been alien technology, a simulation, God, physics, or something for which humanity had no vocabulary, the practical truth remained unchanged. The network they exposed had existed before anyone could see it. The clocks had not connected people. They had only made connection visible. At 2:31 a.m., one corrupted data packet appeared in the archive. Ward nearly deleted it. Its timestamp was impossible. 7:59:59 a.m., 1 second before the phenomenon began. The packet contained no sender and no route, only text. Maya leaned closer. Was that part of the first broadcast? Ward shook his head. We never saw it. He opened the payload. One sentence appeared. Before you see the clocks, you must believe you are separate. Maya read it twice. What does that mean? Ward looked at the enormous historical network behind it. I think it means the clocks weren't showing us time. Across the city, Claire could not sleep. Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch. She sat at the kitchen table scrolling through messages from strangers in the Forever registry. The system was already being shut down, but one message remained unread. It had been sent at 11:58 p.m. by Leela Haddad. Claire opened it. I don't know you. My mum moved the car that freed the ambulance that found your school. Evelyn said you should know. Claire stared at the words. She typed back, I know now. Thank you. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then, maybe one day we'll meet. Claire smiled. She wrote, maybe. No clock appeared to tell her whether they would. At 3:04 a.m., Frank woke in a hospital chair. Thomas was asleep. Grace rested in the bassinet. Evelyn had gone home. Frank looked at his grandson and thought of his son. For 22 years, he had believed their story ended when Thomas Delaney walked out of his house. It hadn't. His son had repaired David's motorbike. David had lived. Sophie had been born. Sophie had known Layla. Nadia had moved a car. An ambulance had reached a school. People Frank would never meet had survived because his son had once decided not to charge a broke stranger for a repair. Frank began to cry quietly. You came back with something worth coming back for, he whispered. At 3:16 a.m., Ward's historical model completed. One final visual filled the wall. Not a chain, not a circuit, not a route. A web so dense that individual lines disappeared entirely. Humanity became a single illuminated shape. Maya stood beside him. That's everyone. Everyone we can model. And forever. Ward pointed at the screen. There was no forever anymore, because every person was connected through consequence to every other person eventually. We were asking the wrong question, he said. We kept asking who the clocks connected us to. Maya understood. But everyone was already connected. Ward closed the model. Outside the university windows, Sydney was beginning the long, quiet stretch before dawn. The impossible day was over. The clocks were gone. Humanity had chosen and somehow discovered there had never been a correct choice. But one mystery remained. Why today? Why reveal the network for exactly 16 hours? Why give people enough time to change lives, but not enough time to build a permanent world around the phenomenon? Ward looked again at the hidden pre-broadcast packet. Before you see the clocks, you must believe you are separate. Beneath it, metadata contained a field he had missed. Delivery status. 1 of 2. Ward froze. He reopened the archive. Maya, she had been packing her bag. What? There were 2 packets. She walked back. Ward searched for the second. Nothing. No timestamp, no payload, no sender. Only an empty placeholder embedded inside the original architecture. Packet 2, pending condition. Maya stared at it. What condition? Ward opened the metadata. For several seconds, the field remained blank. Then text populated as though something somewhere had noticed them looking. Condition: when they believe, they understand. Ward's face drained. At that exact moment, Claire's phone lit up on the kitchen table. No vibration, no alert sound, just light. She looked at it. The screen was black. Daniel remained asleep. Claire picked it up. One line appeared. Nobody else in the world saw it. Not yet. You have seen what connects you. Claire stopped breathing. A second line formed beneath it. Next, you will see what separates you. Then the screen returned to normal. Claire sat motionless. No clock appeared above Daniel. No emergency broadcast followed. No sirens began outside. For 30 seconds, she convinced herself she had imagined it. Then a message arrived from Ward. 3 words. Did you see it? Claire stared at the question. Across Sydney, Ward stared at his screen. Across the sleeping world, billions of people believed the impossible day had ended. It had. The clocks were gone. Whatever came next would be something else entirely. Claire did not answer Ward immediately. Did you see it? Glowed on her screen while Daniel slept on the couch less than 4 meters away. The apartment looked exactly as it had the night before. 2 mugs in the sink, a jacket over the chair, traffic lights changing through the window. Nothing hovered above anyone. No sirens, no global alert. Yet the sentence remained in her memory with the weight of a threat. You have seen what connects you. Next, you will see what separates you. Claire typed 1 word. Yes. Ward replied almost instantly. Don't wake him yet. At the university, Ward and Maya stared at the empty second packet. The condition had been met. When they believe they understand. Why Claire? Maya asked. Why us? Ward shook his head. Maybe because we were looking. That's not an answer. It's the only pattern we've got. The second packet contained no executable code, no broadcast route, no timer architecture. Only a dormant instruction waiting for something else to happen. Maya leaned toward the screen. What if separates you means death? Ward thought of every 0 they had studied. Too simple. War? Borders? Language? Still too simple. Maya looked at the historical web they had reconstructed. Every life touching another through consequence. Then what can separate people who are already connected? Ward looked at her. Choice. At 3:23 a.m., Claire's television switched on by itself. No sound. Daniel woke immediately. What the hell? Claire stood. The screen showed her apartment from above. Not a camera feed, a reconstruction. She could see herself standing beside the table and Daniel rising from the couch. Between them ran hundreds of faint lines, each representing moments from their shared past. A missed train, a first conversation, an argument, a cancelled dinner, a message answered, a message ignored. Daniel stared. Claire, 1 line brightened. The night 6 years earlier, when Claire had nearly moved interstate, another future unfolded beside it. Daniel alone, Claire in Melbourne. Different friends, different jobs, different relationships. Both lives continued. Neither was punishment. They were simply separate. The screen divided again. Thousands of possible versions appeared. Claire staying, Claire leaving, Daniel calling, Daniel not calling, Rebecca never entering Claire's life, St. Catherine's never needing rescue, Nadia taking the motorway instead of the side street, Frank ignoring Thomas's call. Each choice produced another world of consequences. Claire understood before Ward called. They're not showing what separates people, she whispered. Daniel looked at her. Then what? Claire watched versions of herself multiply across the screen. They're showing what separates realities. Ward saw the same structure at the command center. The Forever network had been only 1 layer, consequence within the reality they occupied. Packet 2 exposed the fractures around it. Every decision that could have been made but wasn't. Every path abandoned when another was chosen. Maya watched the model branch faster than the computers could render it. Parallel universes? Ward shook his head. Maybe, or possibilities. We don't know if these exist physically. Then what are we seeing? The cost of choosing. He pointed to a branch where Nadia never stopped for the ambulance. St. Catherine's remained trapped. Another branch showed Aaron taking a different road and reaching them anyway. Another showed the gas leak contained before the school was threatened. No single person controlled the outcome. Every reality was built from collisions between choices. The second packet finally opened. One sentence appeared. Connection is inevitable, continuation is not. Then another. Every choice creates a world you will never know. Ward read it twice. Maya whispered, "That's what separates us." Ward nodded. Not distance, not death, not hatred, possibility. The moment a choice was made, countless other lives became inaccessible. Humanity experienced one path and called it reality because it could not remember the others. Claire watched a version of herself who had never met Daniel. She was not miserable. That disturbed her more than if she had been. She had a different apartment, different photographs, a dog. She laughed beside people Claire did not recognize. Daniel watched too. "She looks happy." Claire nodded. "Yeah. Does that bother you?" "A little." He smiled. "Rude." Claire laughed, then became serious. "I think I always imagined the choices I didn't make as mistakes or missed opportunities. Like somewhere, there was a correct version of my life." Daniel looked at the thousands of branches. "And?" Claire reached for his hand. "There are just versions." Across Sydney, Packet 2 did not broadcast globally. It traveled through the people who had carried forever at the final handoff, then outward one person at a time. Frank's hospital television illuminated. Thomas woke. Above Grace's bassinet appeared no clock, but behind it, the room seemed to split. Frank saw his son alive. Thomas Delaney, older now, grey at the temples, standing beside a version of Thomas Park who had grown up knowing his father. Frank's knees weakened. "Dad?" Thomas whispered, though the man on the screen could not hear him. In that reality, Frank had followed his son into the street after their argument. He had apologized badly. His son had returned badly. They had spent years repairing something that never became perfect. Thomas grew up with both parents. Grace was still born, but on a different day. Frank watched himself hold her as a newborn. "That's what should have happened," he whispered. Thomas looked at him. "Maybe." Frank's eyes filled. "I could have had that." "Yeah." The honesty hurt. Thomas moved closer. "But then you wouldn't have this version." Frank looked at him. "You deserved your father." "I did." Thomas swallowed. "And I still get to have my grandfather." Frank cried without hiding it. For decades, regret had convinced him that the unlived life was automatically better. Now he could see it. Some branches were kinder, some were worse. In one, his son survived the argument but died 5 years later. In another, Thomas was never born. In another, Frank apologized and was rejected anyway. The screen did not absolve him. His choice had mattered. It simply refused to pretend that one mistake contained the entire universe. Frank looked at the sleeping Grace. "No more living in the other branches," he said. Thomas nodded. "Deal." Nadia and Layla saw their fractures on the car's navigation screen. In one reality, Nadia had taken the motorway. The ambulance remained trapped 12 minutes longer. In another, Layla never invited her mother into Sophie's house, and their relationship continued thinning over the next decade. In another, they repaired it years later. In another, they didn't. Layla watched a version of herself at 27 walk past Nadia in a supermarket without stopping. "I hate that one." Nadia's voice was quiet. "So do I." Could that still happen? Of course. Layla looked at her. Nadia continued. "That's the point, isn't it? Seeing a good future doesn't make us entitled to it." Layla took her mother's hand. "Then let's not pick that one." Sophie saw her father. Hundreds of him. David surviving the heart attack because he happened to attend a checkup the week before. David dying 3 years earlier in a car accident. David living to 80. David never meeting Sophie's mother. Realities in which Sophie did not exist at all. She sobbed. "Turn it off." Her mother reached for the screen, but Sophie stopped her. One version showed David at breakfast that morning. Nothing changed. He still died. But instead of rushing out, Sophie sat beside him for 12 extra minutes because she had missed her bus. They argued about toast. He teased her. She hugged him before leaving. Sophie touched the screen. "I didn't do that." Her mother wrapped both arms around her. "No, I would have if I'd known. That's why we can't know." Priya's second packet appeared on her laptop. Molly called while it unfolded. Priya saw realities where she chose another career, another city, another partner. One where she never became a teacher and therefore never met Noah. Another where Noah was absent on the day of the clocks. Another where St. Catherine's evacuation happened too late. She searched the branches instinctively for the safest one. The model refused to hold still. Every safe outcome created another uncertainty farther ahead. Priya laughed through tears. "Of course," Molly asked. "What?" "There isn't a version where I can protect everyone." "You needed a multiverse to tell you that?" Priya smiled. "Apparently." Rebecca and Mia watched together. Mia treated alternate realities with considerably less existential distress than the adults. "That me has purple hair." "You're 8. "Exactly. Why don't I have purple hair?" Rebecca laughed. Then a branch appeared where Rebecca and Mia's father never separated. They were still together. For 1 second, Rebecca felt the old ache. Then the scene continued. They were unhappy. Not catastrophically. Quietly. 2 people staying because leaving frightened them. Mia watched. "Are you sad?" Rebecca considered it. "No." "Good." Another branch showed their separation happening earlier and more cruelly. Another showed them becoming friends years later. Rebecca realized the clocks had spent all day measuring how long connections might last, while Packet 2 showed something more important. Duration had never guaranteed quality. At 4:02 a.m., Ward understood why Packet 2 could not have arrived before Packet 1. If humanity had first seen branching realities, people would have obsessed over themselves, their better lives, their lost loves, their missed fortunes. The clocks had forced them to see consequence first. Strangers before alternatives, connection before separation. Only then could the fractures mean anything beyond regret. Maya looked at him. "So this was designed?" Ward hesitated. "Structured, yes. By whom?" "Still no idea." "That doesn't bother you?" He smiled tiredly. "Enormously." The branching displays began fading at 4:11 a.m. Each recipient received the same final sequence. You cannot live every reality. You cannot keep every person. You cannot avoid every loss. A pause, but every reality is shaped by what you choose while you are in it. Claire read the final line standing beside Daniel. Frank read it beside Thomas. Nadia beside Layla. Priya beside her sleeping city. Rebecca beside Mia. Ward beneath a wall of disappearing worlds. Then one last sentence appeared. Choose without certainty, love without guarantee. And then it was over. Truly over. The screens returned. The hidden packet deleted itself. Ward's archive retained the human records, but none of the impossible code. No third delivery status appeared. No condition waited beneath the metadata. Maya checked anyway, twice. Nothing. Ward leaned back. "Good. You sound disappointed." "I'm exhausted." "That's not the same thing." He looked at the sunrise beginning to pale the windows. "Ask me tomorrow." The days that followed were messy, because revelations do not repair people automatically. Claire still avoided difficult conversations sometimes. Daniel still annoyed her. Nadia and Layla still argued. Priya still worried too much. Rebecca and her former husband did not magically reunite. Sophie still woke expecting to hear her father's footsteps. Frank could not recover 22 missing years. Thomas could not meet the father he had lost before knowing him. Humanity had seen the architecture of consequence and possibility, and then returned to bills, traffic, dishes, work, grief, birthdays, and unanswered messages. But some things changed. Frank visited Thomas 3 days later without needing a cosmic emergency as an excuse. He brought an old photograph of his son holding the injured magpie he had once rescued from the road. Thomas laughed for almost a minute. Grace slept through it. Frank began telling stories. Not heroic ones, real ones. The kind that let a dead person become complicated again. Nadia and Layla had breakfast the following Saturday. They argued about parking before reaching the cafe. Layla called her mother controlling. Nadia called her daughter dramatic. 5 minutes later, they were sharing pancakes. Neither knew whether their relationship had 2 years, 20 years, or 50. The absence of the number was no longer frightening. It was permission to participate. Priya returned to St. Catherine's. Noah had placed the magnetic letters from the basement on her desk. Tomorrow. She left them there. When another teacher asked why, Priya said, "Professional development." Noah laughed so hard he snorted. Priya decided that counted as pedagogy. Rebecca let Mia dye one streak of her hair purple. It washed out in 4 days. Mia considered this a betrayal by chemistry. Rebecca kept the photograph. Claire met them for coffee 2 weeks later. Priya came too. 3 women who had once seen forever above one another sat at a table and discovered that without supernatural clocks, they had very little in common. They laughed about that. Then they stayed for another hour anyway. Layla eventually met Claire, not because a glowing route forced them together, because 6 months after the clocks, Claire found their old messages and wrote, "Coffee." Layla replied, "That would be weird." Claire wrote, "Exactly." Nadia came too. So did Sophie. Frank joined a later gathering after Priya somehow found him through the archived registry. The chain did not survive because fate demanded it. It survived because people kept choosing to answer. Dr. Elias Ward published no definitive explanation. His team's report ran 412 pages and concluded, in language only academics could make so expensive, that the origin of the phenomenon remained unknown. The public hated that. Ward considered it the most accurate sentence he had ever written. He did include one personal note at the end. The absence of explanation should not be mistaken for the absence of meaning. Years later, children learned about Clock Day in school. Some teachers presented it as a scientific mystery. Others treated it as a social catastrophe. Documentaries argued over whether the branching realities had been genuine universes or personalized simulations. Forums catalogued every surviving screenshot. People claimed the clocks returned in dreams. Every few months, a blurry video appeared online, showing a number above someone's head. None were verified. The world gradually did what it always does. It made the impossible historical. Claire grew older. So did Daniel. Their relationship lasted longer than some of the clocks had predicted, and shorter than others. That sentence would have terrified Claire once. It did not mean they failed. Years after Clock Day, they sat on a balcony during a summer storm and talked about the morning the numbers appeared. "Do you remember what mine said at the end?" Daniel asked. Claire smiled. "Forever." "Pretty good." "It was wrong." Daniel looked offended. "Excuse me?" Claire rested her head against him. "No, we were wrong about what forever meant." Because forever had never meant that a person would remain beside you until the end of your life. Frank's son had proved that. David had proved that. A stranger repairing a motorbike could continue through a daughter he never met. A mother moving a car could continue through children she never knew she helped save. A teacher could continue through a frightened boy who remembered how she behaved when adults were scared. A conversation could continue through the person who heard it and chose differently years later. People ended. Consequences didn't always. And perhaps that was the fracture humanity had been shown. Every life moved through one reality while surrounded by countless others it could never enter. Every choice closed doors. Every decision separated one future from another. But within the reality that remained, nobody moved alone. Every step touched something. Every absence shaped something. Every kindness traveled farther than its owner could measure. Every cruelty did too. The clocks had offered humanity the fantasy it had always wanted. Certainty. How long? Who mattered? What would happen? Which path was safe? Then, for one impossible day, people discovered that certainty did not remove responsibility. It multiplied it. Knowing the future could not tell them what kind of people to become before they reached it. So the clocks disappeared, the fractures closed, the numbers were gone, and humanity returned to the terrifying freedom it had possessed all along. To choose without knowing, to love without proof, to apologize before seeing a countdown, to stay without being promised forever, to leave without being shown the alternate life, to help a stranger without ever discovering where that kindness might travel. Somewhere, in another reality, Frank followed his son into the street. Somewhere, Sophie ate breakfast with her father for another 20 years. Somewhere, Claire moved to Melbourne. Somewhere, Nadia took the motorway. Somewhere, the ambulance never reached St. Catherine's. Somewhere, it never needed to. Perhaps those worlds existed. Perhaps they didn't. The people in this one would never know. That was what made this reality theirs. Not because it was the best one, not because it was destined, not because every loss had a reason. It was theirs because it was the reality their choices had reached. And tomorrow, with no clocks above their heads and no map beneath their feet, they would choose again. In this reality, and the next, never stop chasing the fractures. And if you made it this far, maybe this reality was the one where you were meant to find us. If this story made you question the choices that brought you here, leave your thoughts in the comments. Would you have kept the clocks, or would you have let them go? And if you want to explore another reality with us, subscribe to Fractured Realities and turn on notifications. Because somewhere out there, another choice was made. Another path was taken. Another reality is waiting, until we find it. In this reality and the next, never stop chasing the fractures.